The story begins with a corpse lying on the ground, blood spreading across the stone beneath it. The area is silent, carrying the aftermath of violence. Soon after, a group of soldiers arrives at the scene. They move cautiously, advancing toward a temple located along a path that runs between two towering mountains. As they climb the stone steps leading upward, the destruction becomes increasingly apparent. Upon reaching the temple grounds, the devastation is undeniable. The buildings are ruined, and bodies are scattered across the area. One elderly monk among the group struggles to accept what he is seeing. The Manhwa sect, once known for its discipline and strength, has been reduced to a place of death. Another member of the group reacts with visible anger, convinced that only an inhuman force could have caused such destruction. Before any conclusion can be reached, attention shifts forward. Suddenly, movement appears among the corpses. From the rear of the battlefield, a single figure begins to walk forward. As he draws closer, his blood-soaked and heavily wounded face becomes visible, stunning the gathered leaders. They recognize him as the Plum Blossom Sword Saint. Without pause, a vast wave of red energy surges outward from him. The attack overwhelms the front lines instantly, crushing warriors and tearing through the battlefield without resistance. As the chaos spreads, a terrifying red aura rises, revealing the true origin of the massacre. From within the darkness, a hand emerges holding the severed head of Manhwa's leader. The representatives of the sects are left unable to react. A young warrior then steps fully into view, openly provoking the massive gathering. He reveals that his presence was driven by Manhwa's reputation as the strongest sect. Through effortless violence, he proves that reputation false. He throws the fallen leader's head toward the crowd, challenging them to attack together. Consumed by anger and humiliation, the remaining masters unleash a combined assault. Facing them, the warrior calmly accepts the challenge, finding the confrontation finally worth his attention. As the scene transitions smoothly, the perspective shifts to the real world. Dong Bong-soo is revealed sitting in his room, playing a newly released virtual reality game. Inside the game, he controls the sword master seen earlier, fighting countless enemies simultaneously. Even he finds it difficult to believe how many opponents he managed to defeat at once. It becomes clear that the entire massacre was part of the game's content. The game is notorious for its extreme violence, featuring relentless bloodshed and highly realistic depictions of injury and dismemberment. These elements make it especially appealing to Bong-soo. He recalls that the game has already drawn massive backlash and protest emails demanding its shutdown. Despite this, he believes there is nothing else quite like it. Still, he decides that in his next session, he might try playing more calmly. As the atmosphere settles, a television broadcast in his room switches to breaking news. The report announces that the CEO of Dado Industries, No, has gone missing. Bong-soo casually assumes that the man may already be dead and continues watching without concern. Moments later, strange noises echo from outside his room. Sensing something unusual, Bong-soo turns to investigate. Realizing what the sound suggests, he picks up a hammerstick kept nearby and moves into the adjacent room. Inside, a man is revealed, bound tightly and trembling in fear. The man is none other than CEO No, whom Bong-soo has secretly kidnapped and restrained. Bong-soo sets the hammerstick down and sits across from the restrained man, silently observing him. After a brief moment of thought, he moves closer and forces No to raise his head, demanding justification for his survival. Overcome by fear, No insists he has done nothing wrong and claims complete ignorance as to why he was captured. When Bong-soo releases him, No begins coughing violently. The scene shifts to fragments of No's past. He is shown abusing young women without cause, subjecting them to torture and brutal violence. Despite these actions, he continues to deny wrongdoing, repeatedly expressing confusion over his situation. Returning to the present, Bong-soo brings the hammerstick into view and makes it clear that someone truly innocent would never become the target of this kind of hunt. Panicking, No claims he will atone on his own and begs Bong-soo not to interfere. In response, Bong-soo violently pulls him forward by the hair and asserts that the punishment for No's actions must be delivered directly. He raises the hammer, preparing to strike. At that moment, No suddenly attacks, slamming his head into Bong-soo's stomach. The impact disrupts the strike and forces Bong-soo backward. In the same instant, a hidden power awakens within No, allowing him to snap the restraints binding his hands. Freed, he is overtaken by a twisted sense of joy and focuses solely on killing Bong-soo. He grabs the fallen hammer and advances with clear intent. Bong-soo reacts with brief surprise before calmly smiling. He avoids the incoming attack effortlessly and counters with a single punch to No's stomach. The blow overwhelms him completely. As No attempts to stand, Bong-soo delivers a precise kick to his leg, sending him crashing to the floor in far worse condition than before. Desperate, No crawls across the floor and notices a glowing gate ahead. Believing it to be an escape, he drags himself toward it and slips inside. However, once within the room, he senses another presence. When he turns around, he finds himself surrounded by countless corpses staring directly at him. The sight leaves him frozen in terror. Bong-soo enters the room behind him and explains, without emotion, that most humans live as harmless beings, while a small number prey upon others. Among these predators exists a hunter who takes responsibility for eliminating them. As he speaks, Bong-soo's eyes glow red, and his intent becomes clear. He steps forward, resolved to end No's life. Terrified, No attempts to resist, shielding himself while hurling desperate curses. Before Bong-soo can proceed, the door to the room is violently forced open. Police officers storm inside, surrounding Bong-soo with weapons drawn. The commanding officer moves forward and begins arresting him on charges including kidnapping, confinement, and murder. Bong-soo reacts with disbelief, questioning how his location was discovered. The officers respond aggressively, firing a warning shot and making it clear that their weapons are real. Bong-soo observes the impact point of the bullet before slowly looking back at them. The situation reminds him strongly of the virtual game he was just playing. Suddenly, he begins to laugh, confusing the officers. He then reveals the full extent of CEO No's crimes, exposing the murder of 6 women, the torture they endured, and the photographs taken before their deaths. The police are visibly shaken, while No begins to panic as his past is laid bare. Bong-soo gestures toward the corpses in the room, explaining that these lives were taken by No's own hands. He describes people like No as predators who exploit and destroy the innocent. He makes it clear that his actions were part of hunting such individuals. Finally, he points toward No and states that the one deserving punishment today is not himself, but the man standing before them. Hearing Bong-soo's words, CEO No falls into complete terror. One of the police officers, holding a gun while casually lighting a cigarette, makes it clear through his attitude that the only person he sees in front of him is a kidnapper and a murderer. This response ignites a surge of anger inside Bong-soo. He lifts his hammer, realizing that any attempt to make the authorities understand has failed. In that moment, he accepts that explanation has no meaning here. Acting on that realization, he swings the hammer down toward CEO No. The police respond instantly, opening fire as the strike lands. As the hammer connects with CEO No's face, bullets are fired at the same time. Bong-soo catches sight of one bullet rushing toward him. In his final conscious thought, he reflects that if he had been given even one more chance, he would have continued hunting and punishing such creatures without hesitation. Just like in the brutal virtual game, he longs for a place where judgment can be carried out freely and without restraint. The bullet strikes him, and his consciousness begins to fade. Memories flash rapidly through his mind before everything goes dark. After an unknown amount of time, Bong-soo's eyes snap open, and a scream escapes his throat. Regaining awareness, he is unable to comprehend why he is still alive. He clearly remembers being shot. A man stands in front of him, equally shocked, having believed Bong-soo to be dead. As Bong-soo tries to understand his surroundings, the man becomes furious at the sight of him breathing. He grabs Bong-soo by the collar and strikes him, clearly irritated by the effort it took to drag him here from market. After shoving him into a room, the man leaves, showing no further interest, as if his involvement is finished. Rage boils inside Bong-soo. A stone lies near his hand, and he reaches for it, attempting to stand and pursue the man. The stone slips from his grasp. His body betrays him. Violent coughing overtakes him, and his limbs feel impossibly weak. Walking becomes difficult, nearly impossible. Confused, he opens his clothes to examine himself. What he sees confirms something is terribly wrong. This is not his original body. The frame is emaciated, bones protruding beneath skin that shows no sign of strength. Scars cover his body, each one a record of pain and abuse. He looks outside. The moon hangs in the sky, and beyond it stretches a vast empire. As he studies the surroundings more carefully, recognition begins to form. This place resembles the Murim world he knows from games and stories. The realization slowly settles in, and his confusion turns into overwhelming emotion. Anxiety gives way to excitement. Tears stream down his face as laughter escapes him uncontrollably. His wish has been fulfilled, not through survival, but through death and rebirth. His consciousness has arrived in a world governed by strength. When his emotions finally stabilize, his expression twists into an unsettling smile. The scene shifts. Inside a stable, a boy named Sosam works mechanically, cleaning horse stalls. His hands move without thought, his body already accustomed to the filth and stench. The work is interrupted when a servant appears, visibly bothered by the smell. Without concern for the boy's condition, the servant signals that another task awaits. Sosam hesitates, knowing his current work is unfinished. The hesitation is met with violence. He is reminded of his place within the household. As an orphan surviving only on scraps from the Dan family, he has no right to question orders. Resistance is pointless. He is dragged to a blacksmith's workshop filled with rusted weapons and broken blades. An elderly blacksmith waits inside, along with a large, intimidating figure. The blacksmith surveys the workshop with fatigue. Only 2 people have arrived, and the pile of weapons makes the task difficult. Dongo dismisses the concern and treats Sam as labor, striking him hard and knocking him to the ground. Without waiting, Dongo leaves, abandoning him with the work. The blacksmith watches in silence, unable to interfere. Sam forces an oversized bundle of weapons onto his back. The sack is unstable, blades pressing through the fabric. He stumbles under the weight and collapses. The load falls beside him, leaving him motionless from exhaustion. The blacksmith approaches and notes his condition. Sam insists on continuing, but as he turns away, memories knot his own surface. Cold, loss, and prolonged suffering flood his thoughts. His strength fails again, and he collapses. Dongo returns and strikes him without hesitation. The kick sends Sam across the ground. Fragmented memories surface repeatedly, surviving a storm alone, begging at the Danri clan's gate, enduring constant abuse. His consciousness fades as the cold deepens. In the darkness, something changes. Later, Sam awakens in the stable, leaning against a wall. His body is weak, but his awareness is clear. Seeing his reflection in a water trough, recognition settles in. The name returns. Sam. The conclusion forms naturally. The original owner of the body died from the beating, and another consciousness has taken over. He stands alone in the dim stable, confirming the surroundings from memory. As the realization settles, a glowing blue interface appears before him. It matches the Murim online status window. Time passes. During the day, Mel moves through the clan grounds carrying feed, irritated by recent events. Frustration builds, and violent thoughts briefly surface before being dismissed as too risky. He heads to the stable instead. Inside, Sam sits slumped against the wall, bruised and bloodied beside a dropped food bowl. His eyes remain partially open, watching. 2 weeks have passed since awakening in this world. During that time, understanding has formed. The people speak Chinese, but this is not China. The land resembles ancient Asia, yet martial artists here move beyond normal human limits. They leap, train, and fight openly. Martial arts are real in this world. The system confirms it. The Murim online status window functions normally and is visible only to him. This is not a game. The people here are real, each with their own emotions and lives. He considers the question of what he is now. For the moment, the answer is unnecessary. Dongo appears at the doorway and approaches Sam. Sam slowly turns his head to face him. Dongo pauses, surprised by the lack of reaction. Sam calmly lifts his food bowl and drinks from it without acknowledging him. Dongo becomes irritated and attacks. Sam reacts instantly, catching the strike and crushing Dongo's fist. The change is immediate. So Sam continues the assault without hesitation. The confined room fills with violence until Dongo collapses and stops moving. So Sam stands amid the bloodstains and looks at his hands, noting the heat running through his body. The question of identity surfaces briefly and is dismissed. This world is real and follows a clear rule: survival through strength. There is no need to hide here. He sits down and turns his attention to the body. He activates the inventory. A blue space appears, different from the structured layout he remembers. It is a single open space. He reaches into it and confirms its size, then places his hand on the corpse. The body distorts and disappears, leaving only blood behind. He considers the usefulness of this ability and the possibility of further testing. The scene shifts forward. Daylight fills a large Murim-style compound. In a courtyard, two men talk, while So Sam sweeps nearby. He wears a simple mask and continues his work quietly. Their expressions show mockery as they notice him. When he pauses, one of them moves forward and strikes him. So Sam does not resist. He lowers his gaze, resumes his vacant behavior, and continues sweeping. The role remains intact. Matchel shoves Dong Bong Su forward and directs him toward the stable, then forces his head down against a post. Dong Bong Su maintains his weak act and offers no resistance. Matchel vents his frustration briefly, then leaves him to obey the order. Dong Bong Su leads the horse through the busy village streets, maintaining his frail appearance. The market is crowded, and the setting turns the task into a public display. As he walks, he notices children hiding nearby, waiting. They ambush him, throwing a stone that strikes his head. Blood runs down his temple, but he continues walking without reacting. The children laugh and follow, mocking him and throwing more stones. For a brief moment, his silhouette darkens and his presence shifts. The children freeze in fear. One of them breaks down, unsure of what he saw. The moment passes. Dong Bong Su resumes his harmless behavior, pats the horse, and walks on. The children recover and continue mocking him, though with less confidence. He endures it all without response, his steps steady. Back at the armory, Matchel complains to himself while cleaning, irritated by extra work and Dongo's absence. As he wonders where Dongo has gone, the armory door opens and Dong Bong Su steps out. Matchel looks inside and finds every weapon cleaned, polished, and neatly arranged. He is stunned. Dong Bong Su nods, maintaining his foolish expression. Matchel misinterprets the change as obedience. Dong Bong Su offers a small, heavy pouch. Matchel opens it and finds it filled with coins taken from Dongo's body. His confusion turns to satisfaction. Believing the money to be a tribute, he accepts it and leaves in high spirits. Dong Bong Su watches until he is gone. The harmless expression fades, and his gaze turns cold. As dusk falls, Matchel heads into town, pleased with his gain and unaware of the situation. He admires the weight of the pouch and decides how to spend it. He arrives at a high-class brothel and presents the money confidently. The owner recognizes him and hesitates briefly at the request, then accepts the payment and directs him upstairs. Matchel enters a private room, pours himself a drink, and waits. A voice announces itself from outside the door. A woman enters the room. Matchel's attention fixes on her immediately. Her appearance exceeds what he expected, and he gestures for her to come closer. She kneels beside the table and begins serving him. Matchel relaxes, fully distracted. The perspective shifts to a narrow crack in the wall. A single eye observes from the darkness, unmoving. Earlier, Matchel had climbed the steps of the Bungyang Inn and been directed to a room on the second floor. Downstairs, the owner examines the pouch of money Matchel left behind. Brief hesitation gives way to greed. Another figure enters. Dong Bong Su appears in the guise of the frail stable boy. The owner recognizes him and reacts with irritation, but stops when Dong Bong Su presents another heavy pouch. The owner accepts it immediately and directs him to a nearby room on the same floor. Dong Bong Su ascends the stairs calmly. Then owner watches him go, satisfied. Back in Matchel's room, Matchel is now stripped to the waist, his hands bound with cloth. He remains unaware of the danger. A presence moves behind him. A cloth tightens around his neck. Resistance follows briefly, then weakens. The struggle ends with a sharp motion. The body collapses. Dong Bong Su lifts the body and drops it to the floor. He watches until all movement stops. He sits beside the corpse for a moment, then begins clearing the room. His actions are controlled and methodical. He approaches the wall, separating the rooms, and locates the narrow crack used earlier. Turning back, he activates his ability. The body vanishes in a flash of blue light. He remains seated and examines the result. A familiar interface appears. The experience bar has increased slightly. The conclusion is clear. Killing grants experience, and accumulation leads to growth. He leans back, considering the implications. Strength increases through repetition. Efficiency follows power. Dong Bong Su lowers his hand and looks at the empty space where the body once lay, already focused on what comes next. Dong Bong Su briefly covers his face with his arms, then props Matchell's severed head into a small opening in the wall, leaving it displayed. The task finished, he moves away. Outside in the hallway, the owner waits impatiently. An entertainer named Inying approaches the room Dong Bong Su had rented and listens at the door before calling out. The owner grows irritated by the delay and orders her inside. She opens the door and steps into the dark room. The owner remains in the hall, growing uneasy as silence settles over the second floor. He glances toward Matchell's room and knocks, receiving no response. As irritation turns into suspicion, a scream erupts from the other room. He rushes inside and finds a body hanging from the ceiling. In the dim light and confusion, he fails to recognize Guok Dongo and instead calls out Matchell's name. The scene shifts to Anhui. The Huai River in the north and the Yangtze River in the center create a fertile plain where trade flourishes. Along with prosperity come bandits and unorthodox factions. In response, clans and sects rise to enforce order. Among them are the Namong clan and the Danri clan. Though smaller, the Danri clan maintains the Cross Heaven Sword Division and the Black Crow Squad, whose intelligence network surpasses even the beggar sect within Anhui. Recently, the Black Crow Squad has been dealing with a troubling case. Inside their headquarters, a subordinate presents a report to the squad leader, Gyo. Over the past few months, nearly 100 apparent suicides have occurred, far exceeding normal patterns. Every case appears flawless, leaving no trace of foul play. The perfection itself raises suspicion. Gyo asks for the first recorded case and learns it involved Matchell, an armory artisan of the Danri clan. The death occurred at an inn known as the Phoenix Tavern. Gyo decides to investigate personally. At the tavern, Gyo examines the room where Matchell was found hanging. He inspects the floor, walls, and ceiling. There is no sign of forced entry. The wooden wall shows no signs of removal, and the ceiling beams are fixed in place. No one could have entered unnoticed. The conclusion remains uncertain. Gyo asks whether anyone stayed in the adjacent room. The answer confirms another guest arrived around the same time. The name given is Sawsum of the Danri clan. The scene shifts to Dong Bong Su, now known as Sawsum, walking through a village while leading a horse. He reviews his status window, noting that the experience gained from killing a nearby man exceeded previous gains. He concludes that stronger targets yield more experience, but confronting a true martial artist now would be fatal. He decides to seek targets between ordinary civilians and trained warriors. A group of street thugs blocks his path and mocks him. Dong Bong Su remains silent. They strike him and drag him into a narrow alley. He evaluates the situation, considering whether to kill them and dispose of the bodies, then decides against it due to risk and low reward. He endures the beating. A man named Django appears and stops the assault. The thugs show immediate fear. Django examines the horse and reveals his intention to take it as a gift for his superior. Dong Bong Su understands that the plan was to kill him and seize the horse. Django presses him for a response. Dong Bong Su speaks clearly and challenges him directly. The thugs react in shock at hearing him speak. Dong Bong Su activates his inventory. Blue light erupts in the alley, forming a vortex. One thug is caught in the surge as Dong Bong Su draws a sword from the light. The horse is pulled into the inventory. Another burst of energy spreads outward, throwing the remaining thugs back. A system window appears, confirming Dong Bong Su's level has increased from 1 to 2. A red and black aura surrounds him. The thugs panic, recognizing the threat. Some attempt to flee, while others hesitate between running and attacking. Panic spreads through the gang as they realize what stands before them. They turn and flee through the shattered alley. One thug runs in confusion, unable to understand what he encountered. He stumbles and collapses. Psalm approaches, stomps him down, grabs him by the collar, and drags him away. Later, the thug regains consciousness and finds Psalm sitting in front of him. As Psalm steps closer, the thug's fear grows. Psalm presses a knife to his throat and demands information about the man who died earlier. The thug reveals his name was Django and that he belonged to the Black Snake Society. He explains that the Black Snake Society is part of the Ebony Syndicate that controls the back alleys of Bongyang, and that Django was an executive. He also reveals the leader's name, Bang Pa, and admits that Bang Pa ordered Django to kill Master Sum and take the horse. Psalm processes the information and understands the structure of the Ebony Syndicate and the Black Snake Society. He demands everything the thug knows, making it clear his survival depends on it. The thug cooperates fully. Moments later, the thug lies dead. Psalm opens his inventory and removes all the bodies, leaving no trace. He remains at the scene and reviews what he learned. The Ebony Syndicate becomes a clear target. These people exist between ordinary civilians and martial artists, fitting what he's been searching for. He notices that all wounds on his body have healed completely after leveling up. Every injury is gone. He considers that even fatal damage might be recoverable under certain conditions, making calculated risk acceptable when close to leveling. He reflects on the light that appeared during the level up and recognizes it as a danger. Both the glow and the inventory-based killings risk exposure. Remaining unnoticed is essential. A hunter must appear ordinary and blend in completely. Leveling must occur only after a hunt or in isolated places. Psalm stands beside his horse and reviews the encounter. If Django had been more cautious or stronger, the outcome could have been different. Pretending to be mute is no longer enough. He decides he must grow stronger quickly without being discovered. That resolve settles firmly. A system message appears, reporting a critical error in the Murim online system. It states the game can continue, but the warning remains unresolved. Psalm notes the error appeared after reaching level 2 and concludes it is likely caused by his existence interacting with the system. He checks his status window. Attributes previously marked as question marks now appear as gauge bars. He considers that this change may be tied to the error and that not everything can be fully quantified in reality. He reviews his skills. Common passive skills such as stab, block, and throw are listed. One skill stands out. Spirit Eye. It has no description, and its function remains unclear. At that moment, the system announced that the activation conditions for Spirit Eye had been met. The skill activated automatically when an enemy with a level difference of 10 or more entered a 20-meter range. The displayed distance continued to decrease. Psalm inferred that Spirit Eye functioned as an early warning. As the distance shortened, his attention shifted toward the gate. He judged the presence unlikely to be an enemy. Few would dare enter the Danri clan, and an intruder would not move this openly. The approaching individual was likely an expert from a clan. Psalm did not yet understand what a 10-level difference truly meant. Considering the effort and risk required just to reach level 2, the gap had to be significant. Reaching level 10 through ordinary people alone would require thousands, possibly tens of thousands, of deaths. That difference represented the weight of many lives. Someone of that level within the Danri clan was approaching. The door opened. A man entered, placed a hand on Psalm's shoulder, and asked whether he was the one who killed Mel. Psalm froze. Internal energy flowed from the man's hand into Psalm's body, circulating through him and inspecting him completely. When the inspection ended, the man withdrew his hand and left with his subordinates. Psalm remained silent. Outside, a subordinate asked why the man had left without interrogating the boy and whether he had been suspicious. The man confirmed his suspicion and explained that he had already checked by injecting internal energy. If Psalm had practiced martial arts, traces would have remained. There were none. Psalm was an ordinary person with no internal energy. As they walked away, the man considered whether the deaths were truly suicides. If it was a plague, he wondered how many more would die before it ended. On a night lit by an eerie moon, the suicide plague in Bayong abruptly stopped. In its place, killings began to spread through the city. Heavy rain followed. Inside a bar, several people drank together. One mentioned the story of a nameless swordsman. The other acknowledged that nearly everyone had heard it. The first insisted the figure should be called the Great Nameless Swordsman and said he was hunting members of the Ebony Syndicate. The second warned him to speak quietly. The first dismissed the concern and said the White Tiger Unit and Red Wolf Sect had already been wiped out. The second replied that one group remained and warned that the Black Snake Society would not tolerate such talk. The first said their turn would come and claimed the Nameless Swordsman would destroy them as well. Nearby, another man listened without reacting. He finished his drink, stood up, and left the bar in silence. The scene shifts outside the Black Crow Squad mansion. A security guard is asleep at the gate. His companion arrives and slaps him awake. The guard apologizes. His companion scolds him, warning him about the chaos caused by the Nameless Righteous Swordsman, stating that 3 black units have already been wiped out and that only the Black Society remains. He realizes the guard is falling asleep again. Before he can finish, the protagonist appears and cuts off the sleeping guard's head. The companion turns, freezes in fear, and begins to speak, but the protagonist strikes first and kills him in a single blow. The protagonist enters the mansion. Numerous arrows are fired at him by the soldiers. He narrowly dodges them and faces the soldiers. One soldier addresses him, stating he knew the Nameless One would come. The protagonist draws his sword. Thunder rumbles overhead. The commander orders the soldiers to kill him. The soldiers charge together. The protagonist cuts them down with his sword without pause. As the soldiers fall, fear spreads. The commander orders the remaining troops to move and advances himself, declaring he will kill the protagonist personally. The protagonist advances and kills the commander along with the soldiers around him. One soldier curses as he approaches, claiming he has caught the protagonist. The protagonist cuts him down as well. Another soldier rushes toward the protagonist and shouts for him to surrender. The protagonist commands the system. Inventory. A knife appears behind the soldier. He freezes in shock and questions how it appeared. Another soldier closes the distance and strikes the protagonist directly. After landing the hit, he laughs, claiming he finally succeeded and mocking the protagonist as nothing more than a human who can be killed. The protagonist drops to one knee and pulls the blade from his chest. The remaining soldiers hesitate, noticing his expression and questioning why he is smiling. The protagonist moves and cuts down the remaining soldiers. Elsewhere in the mansion, the squad leader's companion notices the sudden silence. He mutters that the screams have nearly stopped and questions whether one man is truly killing everyone. He recalls their past crimes and realizes that strength, not morality, determines survival. Sweating, he decides to act. He moves toward a hidden passage that leads to Paradise Manor, the leader's estate, and resolves to fight in the darkness. He orders his soldiers to fire. Arrows rain down, and several strike the protagonist. The companion hesitates, questioning whether the protagonist is dead. Before he can finish, the protagonist appears and kills one soldier instantly. The remaining soldiers are cut down just as quickly. Terrified, the companion calls out, asking if anyone is still alive. He draws his sword and confronts the protagonist, asking if he is the Nameless Righteous Swordsman and demanding to know what they did to deserve this. As the protagonist approaches, the man protests, claiming he is not the Grim Reaper and questioning his right to judge them. The protagonist cuts off his head before he can finish. Holding his sword steady, the protagonist states that he wants only one thing: their lives. He moves forward and declares that the only one left now is the Black Society leader, Bang Poyam. While moving forward, the protagonist reflects. First was the White Tiger Unit. After leveling up by killing Django, he was still weaker than most members of the Black faction. He relied on luring, ambushing, and arson to begin his hunt. By the time the White Tiger Unit leader became alert, more than half of the unit had already been killed. During that period, officials and townspeople gave his actions a name: the Nameless Righteous Swordsman. After adopting this identity, eliminating members of the unorthodox faction became easier. When he killed the White Tiger Unit leader, he reached level 5 and obtained his first active skill, Qinggong, a body lightning technique, along with the 3 Forces sword art. With these, he could confront Black faction members directly. Around the time children began playing games imitating the Nameless Righteous Swordsman, the Red Wolf Gate was wiped out. The only unorthodox faction remaining in Banyang was the Black Society. The scene shifts to the residence of the Black Society leader. Outside the house, Black Society leader Bang Poyam sits on the floor. The protagonist appears before him. After observing him, Bang Poyam speaks, asking if he is the nameless righteous swordsman. The protagonist remains silent. Bang Poyam comments that if he were truly a swordsman of justice, he would not be so tightly wrapped. The protagonist replies that he is not one. Bang Poyam asks why he hunts and kills the unorthodox faction if that is the case. The protagonist answers that he is not a righteous swordsman. Bang Poyam laughs and says that he has deceived everyone. The protagonist steps closer and states that he deceived no one, and that people only believed what they wanted to believe. As Bang Poyam reaches for his sword, he remarks that the protagonist is interesting. Drawing his weapon, Bang Poyam says that even if he must cross the river of the dead today, he will have no regrets. Laughing, he charges and declares that regardless of titles, the protagonist came to kill him, and demands to see what he has. Both advance toward each other. Bang Poyam lands a direct strike on the protagonist. The protagonist counterattacks, but the strike is blocked. He attacks again, and Bang Poyam blocks and counters. As they exchange blows, Bang Poyam notices an opening and judges that it is too short and will not reach. The leader of the Black Society strikes again, hitting the protagonist directly and sending him flying backward. Before the protagonist can recover, the leader advances with a grin and speaks, noting that the protagonist's body is not in perfect condition. The leader attacks again. This time, the protagonist blocks. Another strike follows, and the protagonist blocks once more while realizing that the leader is deliberately targeting his injuries. He understands that continuing like this will lead to defeat, even if it requires sacrificing his body. As the exchange continues, the leader questions what the protagonist is thinking in the middle of the fight. The protagonist blocks another strike and loudly commands the activation of the Three Forces sword art. Before the skill can activate, the leader binds him with a rope-like sword and declares that he has caught him. The protagonist reacts in shock, realizing it is a whip sword. He struggles but cannot free himself. Observing him, the leader remarks that the technique was effective and notes that this is his first encounter with a whip. Before the leader can act further, the protagonist breaks free, reversing the momentum and sending the leader flying backward. The protagonist stands calmly and watches from a distance. Before he can recover fully, a large glowing snake-shaped construct appears in front of him. The protagonist reacts to its sudden manifestation. The leader rises and comments that the protagonist willingly used his own body as bait, stating that such behavior is not the way of a martial artist. As he advances, he calls it the way of an assassin or a hunter. Revealing his snake-like form, the leader explains that in a life-or-death duel, the one who hides more gains the advantage. He tears apart his clothing and declares that he had more hidden while the protagonist had less, calling a fatal flaw. The protagonist stands firmly, sword in hand. Advancing, the leader states that the protagonist has no moves left and orders him to die, calling him the nameless murderous demon. As he speaks, the glowing snake-shaped structure advances toward the protagonist with its jaws wide open. As the snake-like structure advances, the protagonist remains still for a moment. He then swings his blade powerfully, creating an air vortex that fills the area with dust and debris. As the dust spreads, Bang Poyam states that blocking his vision is useless. When the dust begins to settle, Bang Poyam spots a figure and immediately strikes with his snake whip, cutting it in two. As the dust clears, he realizes the body belongs to a Black Society member. It was a decoy. He looks upward and sees the protagonist above him. Midair, the protagonist activates the Three Forces sword art, second form, and descends with force. He lands a direct strike. Bang Poyam blocks with his hand, stopping the blade before it reaches his heart. The sword embeds into his palm, and he cries out in pain. The protagonist realizes Bang Poyam blocked the strike in an instant to protect a vital point. Bang Poyam, angered, declares the fight is not over and redirects the whip sword toward the protagonist. The protagonist attempts to withdraw his blade to counter, but Bang Poyam grips it tightly and refuses to release it. Before the whip sword lands, the protagonist opens his inventory. Numerous corpses fall out and act as a barrier. The whip slices through the bodies, cutting them apart as they fall. Wounded and exhausted, Bang Poyam notes that corpses appeared from nowhere to block his attack, indicating the protagonist still has hidden methods. Unable to locate him, Bang Poyam grows frustrated and swings his whip sword wildly, accusing him of using corpses in battle. An arrow suddenly flies toward him. He blocks it with his whip sword. Immediately after, another arrow pierces through Bang Poyam's head. As he is struck, he questions the situation and realizes he may have become the prey. At that moment, Bang Poyam notices another figure approaching. He becomes alert and calls out. He swings his whip sword and cuts the figure instantly. After the strike, he realizes the body belongs to one of his own men. The protagonist appears behind him and thrusts his sword through Bang Poyam's body. He drives the blade in fully and then pulls it out. Bang Poyam looks at his wound and speaks, acknowledging that every black society member in Banyang has been killed and questioning the reason. The protagonist replies that no reason is necessary. Humans have always killed other humans, from primitive times to civilization. The strong trample and take from the weak. He steps closer, places his sword at Bang Poyam's neck, and states that this time he was the strong one. With a swift motion, he kills him. The area falls silent. Lightning rumbles as the protagonist exits. He walks forward, wiping blood from his sword. He pauses and reflects that with the death of every black society member in Banyang, his preparations are complete. It is time to move to the next stage, where the strong are stronger and the prey is harder to hunt. He decides to go to Murim's Jianghu. The scene shifts to another region. Inside a grand mansion, an assembly of leaders is in progress. The leader asks how long remains until the Orthodox demonic war. An assembly member answers that 2 years remain. The leader repeats the timeline and states it is time to begin the grand plan. He calls for Gwangwon. Gwangwon steps forward, bows in response. The leader orders him to execute the first stratagem. Gwangwon accepts the command. The scene shifts to morning. The protagonist walks through the village market with his horse. At an outdoor restaurant, a man says to his companion that the nameless swordsman has wiped out the black society. His companion replies that merchants and courtesans are in uproar and that he never expected the black faction in Banyang to be completely cleared out. The first man suggests that he should now be called the Nameless Righteous Swordsman. A man in green clothing joins them and says he is not so sure about that. When asked why, he questions whether it is acceptable to kill people that way, even if he is a hero. The first man tells him to watch his mouth and reminds him of what the black society had done, saying they deserve to die. The man in green hesitates, but the companion adds that neither officials nor the Orthodox faction ever cared about commoners, and that only the nameless swordsman stepped up for them. The man in green agrees that without him, no one would have stood up for people like them. The first man stands and begins shouting praise for the nameless swordsman who drove the black faction out of Banyang. The others join in. Nearby people begin cheering as well. Within moments, the entire village is chanting his name. The protagonist walks away slowly and says that it is time for him to leave as well. By sunset, he arrives near the Danri clan residence and approaches the horse stable. A notification appears. An enemy with a level difference of 10 or more has approached within 20 meters. He realizes his spirit eye is pointing toward the stable. He opens the gate and enters. 2 figures are standing inside. As he approaches, he recognizes Black Crow unit leader Gi Daehyo, and beside him, the head of the Danri clan, the flying heavenly demon sword, Danri Chanwo. The protagonist kneels and wonders why they are there. Danri Chanwo pats the horse's head and says it is time to say goodbye to it as well. Looking at his feet, the protagonist notices that Danri Chanwo is hovering slightly above the ground. Danri Chanwo states that on the coming full moon, the second daughter of the Namgung clan head is getting married. Gi Daehyo asks whether he is certain about sending his cherished horse as a congratulatory gift. Danri Chanwo says that if he could send one of his children to the Namgung clan, he would do even more than sending the horse. He mentions marriage ties and the 9 bows ceremony, repeating that sending one of his children would be better. It is easier to cross a stream with 2 logs rather than 1. Gi Daehyo replies that the Namgung clan might not want either of them. Danri Chanwo laughs and says that is why he called him. He does not care what methods are used. He places a hand on Gi Daehyo's shoulder and tells him to make it happen no matter what. Gi Daehyo becomes tense. Danri Chanwo removes his hand and orders him to depart immediately, saying he will have much to do tomorrow. Gi Daehyo bows and accepts. Danri Chanwo then points at the protagonist and instructs Gi Daehyo to take him along to the Namgung family, as he is needed to handle the horse. Gi Daehyo agrees and looks at the protagonist with confusion. The scene shifts to the next morning in front of the Danri clan residence. The protagonist waits near a shed with the horse. He reflects on how to learn proper martial arts instead of relying only on skills. He tried imitating the movements of family warriors and black unit leaders, but it was only imitation. Learning from a secret manual would be the worst option, and learning directly from a master the best. However, becoming someone's disciple at 18 is difficult. Despite that, he feels the situation has worked out well. While waiting near the soldiers, he considers the Namgung clan. As one of the 5 great clans with power in Anhui, there should be opportunities there, along with stronger prey. Gi Daehyo appears and observes the assembled unit. He confirms the Black Crow unit has finished assembling and asks who has not arrived. A soldier replies that everyone is present except the young master and young lady. Gi Daehyo grits his teeth. He remarks that Danri Ganghai is likely at a tavern in Bongyang, and Danri Hui dislikes traveling with subordinates and will follow later. He orders the unit to move out. The cavalry advances. Gi Daehyo stops outside a tavern and commands everyone to halt. A loud voice can be heard from inside. Gi Daehyo shows irritation and thinks about Danri Ganghai, the eldest son of Danri Chanwo. Though a martial arts prodigy with talent sufficient to enter the Namgung clan as an outer disciple, his character is problematic. He is frivolous and fond of alcohol and women, and rumors follow him. As Gi Daehyo approaches the tavern, the noise grows louder. He comments that Danri Ganghai is beating someone again. Suddenly, a man is thrown out through a wall and crashes into another wall. Gi Daehyo recognizes him and calls out to young Master Danri. A notification appears. An enemy with a level difference of 10 or more has approached within 20 meters. Ganghai lies on the ground and shouts at someone, threatening him. Another man advances toward him. Gi Daehyo stares at that man in shock. The protagonist recognizes him as a master of overwhelming skill. An old man appears, releasing intense green energy as he advances toward Ganghai. Gi Daehyo steps forward and tells him a halt. The old man turns and asks who he is. He strikes again, releasing a shockwave. Gi Daehyo identifies himself as the head of the Danri clan's Black Crow unit and states that the person being tormented is the young master of the Danri clan. He warns the old man to remove his foot or he will not stand idle. The soldiers draw their weapons. The protagonist observes that even the Black Crow unit leader does not recognize this man. Someone unknown to Gi Daehyo, who knows Anhui Murim thoroughly, must be an outside master of immeasurable strength. With the forces present, defeating him would be impossible. The old man looks at Gi Daehyo and the soldiers and thinks that they will not die, as a lion does not use full force to kill a bug. He responds casually, asking what the Danri clan is and whether it is something to eat. Gi Daehyo becomes angry and says he dares to insult the Danri clan. The old man replies that he truly does not know whether the Danri clan is something to eat or something to step on. Enraged, Gi Daehyo draws his sword and orders the Black Crow unit to save the young master. At his command, the soldiers charge. The old man remains calm. He raises his hand, forms a hand sign, condenses energy onto his finger, and releases a single strike. The attack hits the advancing unit. In an instant, the entire force is thrown into the air and crashes to the ground. The attack also strikes Gi Daehyo. As he falls, he realizes what it is, the soul-chasing flying butterfly. Half conscious on the ground, he begins to speak in disbelief. The old man approaches and remarks that for a country laborer, his eyes are not completely useless. He identifies himself as the soul-chasing poison hand, Tang Wu. The protagonist recognizes the name. Among the 20 strongest in Murim, the 2 gods, 3 monsters, 5 pinnacles, and 10 greats, Tang Wu stands as one of the 10 greats and the supreme master of the Sichuan Tang clan. Those who offend him cannot escape his poison even in death. If Danri Ganghai has offended someone of Tang Wu's stature, the consequences for the Danri clan could be severe. A girl in green approaches Tang Wu and calls him Grandpa. He responds. She suggests they leave, saying these are merely ignorant country people. Tang Wu's expression softens. He agrees and says this should be enough for the young master to understand how vast the world is. He slaps Ganghai once more, then tells Gi Daehyo that a descendant of the Orthodox faction causing trouble from mourning is disgraceful. Though he would normally take harsher action, he refrains. He instructs that when the young master wakes, he should be warned that continuing to harass women will shorten his lifespan. Gi Daehyo, still unable to move, thanks him for his mercy. Tang Wu withdraws the poisonous darts from his soldiers. The darts gather into his hand and vanish. He begins to call to his granddaughter to leave, but suddenly senses something unusual. His attention shifts to the fallen soldiers. He notices the protagonist among them and walks toward him, telling Hua to stay where she is. The protagonist wonders why Tang Wu is approaching him. Tang Wu stands before him silently and stares. Hua asks what is happening. Tang Wu replies that it is nothing special. He simply has something to ask the child. The protagonist is confused. Tang Wu asks his name. The protagonist remains silent. Tang Wu raises his voice and repeats the question. The protagonist remains silent. Tang Wu grows irritated and calls him a brat. Ji Daehyo steps in respectfully and explains that the boy is a horse handler and cannot speak. Tang Wu looks at the protagonist closely and asks if he is mute. He studies him carefully. The protagonist realizes Tang Wu is evaluating him, as if examining something valuable. If a master like Tang Wu sees worth in him, this is an opportunity to shed the identity of Sosum, the horse handler. Tang Wu suddenly grabs the protagonist's hand and examines the flow of energy in his body. He then begins laughing. He turns to Ji Daehyo and asks if they are heading to the Namgung clan. Ji Daehyo confirms it is for a marriage alliance. Tang Wu asks what the child does. Ji Daehyo explains that he manages the Fergana horse they are presenting as a gift. Tang Wu smiles and asks if he can take the child. Ji Daehyo is alarmed and says no, as no one else can control the horse. Tang Wu considers briefly and proposes that they transport the horse to the Namgung clan first. After arrival, he will take the child. He adds that he will speak to Namgung personally and, if necessary, write a letter to the Danri clan head along with payment. Ji Daehyo hesitates, then says they intended to present the boy along with the horse anyway, and agrees. Tang Wu laughs loudly and expresses satisfaction. He tells him to hurry and follow. Ji Daehyo shows visible irritation. He orders the soldiers to send the young master to a physician immediately and instructs the rest of the Black Crow unit to move out again. The protagonist remains uncertain. Ji Daehyo remains tense, while Tang Wu is pleased. They travel until nightfall and arrive at an inn. Ji Daehyo announces they will stay there for the night. The soldiers enter and begin their meal. Inside the stable, the protagonist sits on the ground and focuses inward. Since the battle with the Black Society, his control over the inventory has improved. He can now summon it within roughly a meter around him. With practice, the range may increase. Through it, he can retrieve swords or corpses and fire them outward, though the projection speed is not fast enough to threaten a master. He picks up a handful of sand and releases it, then opens the inventory. The sand disappears inside. He retrieves it again into his hand. He has become skilled at this. There's another method. Anything that enters his body can be transferred into the inventory. He places sand into his mouth and confirms it can be stored. He regards it as a divine art. He hears footsteps approaching the stable. Hua enters, questioning why her grandfather wants someone like him brought at this hour. She tells him to follow. They walk toward a room. Soldiers watch them pass. At the door, Hua announces their arrival and enters. Tang Wu sits on a wooden block inside. He tells them to sit cross-legged on the platform. Hua sits. The protagonist also sits. Tang Wu tells the protagonist to strip everything. He removes his clothes and sits again. Tang Wu observes his physique and says it is not bad. He brings out a box and calls it the Dragon Phoenix Golden Needles. Hua reacts, asking what he intends to do. Tang Wu sets the box down and explains the saying about oranges from Huainan becoming trifoliate oranges in Huaibei. If Huainan is the Danri clan and Huaibei is the Tang clan, then if the orange is Sosum, the trifoliate orange will be something else. He places his hand on the box and tells the protagonist he intends to perform a great ritual. It will be extremely painful, possibly unbearable, but if he survives, he will gain something greater and his muteness will be cured. Tang Wu opens the box. Light fills the room. He asks whether he will do it. The protagonist remains silent. Hua steps forward and objects, saying such a serious matter should not be decided without the elder's consent. She explains something to Tang Wu. He listens and laughs. After hearing her, he acknowledges her point. Tang Wu takes out a golden needle and asks the protagonist whether he is ready to receive the surname of the Tang clan. Tang Wu reflects inwardly. In Murim, many terms exist for those born with exceptional aptitude for martial arts, heavenly meridian body, while turning sacred emperor aspect, ninth grade sacred bone, heavenly martial heart meridian, cosmic sacred bone. These are rare talents said to appear once in decades, centuries, or even millennia. Those born with them leave marks on Murim's history. Yet the greatest aptitude of all is something he has found unexpectedly. Whether a talent appears once in 10, 100, or 1,000 years does not matter. This boy possesses a body never seen since Murim's beginning, a body with no meridians. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, simply untrained. But his body lacks the acupoints and pathways every human should have. Nothing exists as if he is not human. However, having no path means any path created becomes the path. If raised properly, he may be able to restore the 10,000 flower rain, a technique that has survived only in form for centuries. If that happens, the powers of Murim will bow before the Tang family. Holding the needle, Tang Wu thinks that the future of the Tang family lies in his hands. He points the needle at the protagonist and asks again whether he intends to accept the Tang surname. The protagonist nods. Tang Wu says that he has not yet fully become a member of the Tang family. He must go to the Tang clan and prove himself before the elders and the family head. He may die in the process. He asks if he will still proceed. The protagonist nods again. Tang Wu activates his power and moves closer, declaring that he will now perform the Great Reformation ritual. He instructs what to stand guard. While steps outside, multiple needles appear in the air under Tang Wu's control. With a gesture, he directs them toward the protagonist's body. Holding the golden needle, he announces that he will begin. He drives the needle into the top of the protagonist's head. The tip begins to glow green. Seated on the wooden block, the protagonist observes Tang Wu and Hua. They assume he cannot understand because they're using sound transmission, but he reads their lips. A skill he once used for hunting now serves him here. He considers the phrase body of no meridians. The status window and system visible only to him likely resulted in a body that is neither fully human nor character. Tang Wu cannot know this and has formed his own conclusion. In that case, he only needs to play along. After careful work, Tang Wu places needles across the protagonist's entire body. Standing back, Tang Wu examines him. The temporarily created acupoints show no blockage in qi and blood flow. His qi flows several times faster than that of an ordinary martial artist. However, caution is necessary. Tang Wu opens a box containing insects and selects a millipede-like creature with a needle. To prevent others from taking what he considers precious, he inserts the goo into the protagonist's ear as a precaution. He then methodically removes all the needles. By evening, the ritual is complete. Tang Wu tells him that from now on, he is no longer the Danri family's horse handler, but a member of the Tang clan, the greatest family in Sichuan. After a moment of thought, Tang Wu names him Tang Sam. The protagonist rises and responds with a smile, while waits outside in tension. The protagonist exits the room wearing new clothes and steps away from the others. Using his ability, he removes the millipede from his body. It appears in his hand. He crushes it immediately. He acknowledges that Sosum of the Danri family is gone. He is now Tang Sam of the Sichuan Tang family. Facing the sun with his arms open, he accepts this as his new beginning. The scene shifts to a grand mansion standing on a hill under the bright moonlight. Inside the mansion, sounds come from one of the rooms. A white-haired man and a woman are lying on a bed. They were enjoying their moment. After finishing their moment, the woman rests on the bed and slowly opens her eyes. She suddenly notices someone descending from above with a sword and reacts in shock. At the same moment, the white-haired man quickly jumps away from the bed and lands on the ground. The masked assassin lands and immediately kills the woman with his sword. The white-haired man stands up and looks at his clothes, noticing that blood has stained his expensive silk robe. He complains about the damage to his robe and angrily demands to know the assassin's identity. The assassin remains silent and points his sword toward him. He then swings his blade, releasing waves of black energy as he advances. The white-haired man draws his sword and blocks the attack, causing an energy clash. After the exchange, he comments that the assassin is weaker than expected. He then draws another sword using his magic and launches a stronger attack with both weapons. The assassin jumps backward and avoids the strike. The white-haired man continues pressing the attack and releases another powerful strike that pushes the assassin backward. In response, the assassin gathers black energy around his sword and counters. As their techniques collide, both attacks cancel each other out, although the assassin is pushed back slightly. After observing the technique, the white-haired man realizes that the assassin is using the ink light killing sword. He recognizes the attacker as Mad Cloud and asks if it has been 10 years since they last met. Mad Cloud corrects the time precisely. The white-haired man laughs and sits down on a chair, confirming that the assassin is indeed Mad Cloud because of his precise memory. He then asks why the 18th Cloud has personally come here. Mad Cloud explains that he has arrived to deliver orders and addresses the white-haired man by the name Ash Shadow. The white-haired man asks what the order is. Mad Cloud informs him that the order is the first stratagem. After hearing this, the white-haired man becomes tense and scratches the wooden table with his nails. He acknowledges that the plan is finally beginning and asks about Shifting Shadow. Mad Cloud explains that Shifting Shadow is currently connected to the Namgung clan and that the 15th of this month will be Shifting Shadow's wedding day. The white-haired man reacts with confusion upon hearing about the wedding and realizes that Shifting Shadow is involved in it. He then asks about the scope of the operation. While continuing to scratch the table with his nails, he states that everyone is to be eliminated except Shifting Shadow and Namgung High. He also mentions that the soul-chasing Poison Hand will soon arrive in Anhui and that their current forces in the region will not be sufficient. Mad Cloud responds that 5 shadows will be sent. The white-haired man accepts this and concludes that it should be enough. Mad Cloud states that he has delivered the orders and prepares to leave. Before he disappears, the white-haired man asks what Shifting Shadow's real name is. Mad Cloud ignores the question and vanishes using his technique. The white-haired man reacts with irritation and complains about Mad Cloud's personality. He mutters that he feels jealous, thinking about how shadows were expected to live alone. Yet one of them has even obtained the first beauty of Anhui as a bride while he remains in the same gloomy place. He leaves the room and flicks his finger. A servant immediately appears in response to the signal. He orders the servant to clean the room, remove the body on the bed, and kill all the guards who are on duty that day. The servant bows and acknowledges the order, addressing him as branch leader. The white-haired man then walks to the balcony and looks down at the city below. The mansion is revealed to be the Anhui branch of the heavenly demon divine cult. The white-haired man himself is identified as the branch leader known as the naked silver demon, Yahello. Standing on the balcony and looking toward the city, he reflects that the operation is finally beginning. Meanwhile, the protagonist, Tang Wu, and the soldiers continue traveling toward their destination. Tang Wu signals for the group to stop and notes that they have arrived sooner than expected. The protagonist looks toward the city ahead and recognizes it as Anhui, the place ruled by the Namgung clan. The scene shifts to the city. The sky is filled with fire lanterns, and the streets are lively with celebration. People cheer while performers entertain the crowds. The entire city is decorated, including a large mansion where the event is being held, and people throughout the streets are enjoying the festivities. At the entrance gate of the mansion, several poor people bow before a soldier and beg for a small portion of rice to share. The soldier becomes irritated and angrily tells them that they have no idea where they are and orders them to leave. One of the poor men asks if they could at least receive leftovers. The soldier responds by kicking the man hard, knocking him into the others. One of the poor men calls out to his fallen companion. At that moment, a voice from inside the mansion asks about the commotion. The gate opens, and a long brown-haired man steps out. The soldier quickly bows and explains that a group of beggars had gathered at the entrance. The brown-haired man looks at the soldier silently. From a distance, 2 people observe the scene. One of them identifies the man as Du Hyo-ok, the central figure of the banquet, while the other comments on his tall and handsome appearance. Du Hyo-ok approaches the man who was kicked and checks if he is all right. He offers his hand and helps the man stand. He then instructs the soldier to share food with the poor people, explaining that there should still be leftovers before the wedding begins. The soldier respectfully agrees. Du Hyo-ok then returns inside the mansion. The 2 observers continue discussing him. One remarks that he truly lives up to the reputation of a rising star, possessing both good character and strong martial ability, which explains why the Namgung clan's daughter chose him. The other adds that Du Hyo-ok once traveled to Jianghu alone and eventually defeated the Yin-Yang twin demons, 2 figures who had rampaged across the Jianghu for decades. They note that a wandering young warrior defeating those 2 demons and later becoming the Namgung clan's son-in-law is remarkable. As they continue talking, one of them begins mentioning rumors related to the martial arts of the Thunderblade Emperor, who was considered the greatest under heaven 300 years ago. At that moment, Tang Wu bumps into one of them. The man begins to protest, but is interrupted when Tang Wu responds sharply. The man immediately recognizes him as the soul-chasing Poison Hand, Tang Wu, and becomes frightened. Tang Wu grabs the man by the head and slams him to the ground. He then walks away, telling him to move aside and calling them useless. Tang Wu and the others continue toward the mansion. Inside the mansion, Du Hyo-ok is welcoming an elderly guest when he notices movement near the gate. As Tang Wu arrives at the entrance, he loudly demands silence. The surrounding people gather around him while he states that if anyone has something to say, they should speak directly rather than whispering behind his back. Du Hyo-ok steps outside and asks Tang Wu to calm down. He bows respectfully and introduces himself as Du Hyo-ok. Tang Wu acknowledges that he is the young man who caused him to come all this way. He remarks that meeting him earlier would have been preferable and states that seeing him now is disappointing. Du Hyo-ok reacts with confusion and asks Tang Wu what he means. Tang Wu ignores the question and, while walking inside the mansion, asks if Bayok is present. Du Hyo-ok explains that the clan head is waiting inside and hurriedly offers to guide Tang Wu to the king's hall, running after him. The protagonist watches Du Hyo-ok with confusion. As he focuses on him, the system informs him that an enemy with a level difference greater than 10 has entered within 20 meters. After receiving the notice, the protagonist observes Du Hyo-ok carefully. He notes a subtle gap between him and Tang Wu and notices that Du Hyo-ok continues walking at a steady pace without stopping. From this, he concludes that the newly detected high-level presence must be Du Hyo-ok. He studies Du Hyo-ok's body further. Normally, every human has some left-right asymmetry in features such as the face, limb length, or shoulder height. However, Du Hyo-ok appears completely balanced, almost perfectly symmetrical. The protagonist interprets this as someone of the same species as himself, a predator hiding beneath a human appearance. The scene shifts to the area outside the Namgung clan's King's Hall. Du Hyo-ok leads them toward a large building with several swords embedded along the top. When Tang Wu sees the swords belonging to past clan heads, he criticizes the arrogance of calling themselves kings and remarks that in the end they will lie in graves like everyone else. Du Hyo-ok asks Tang Wu to wait outside for a moment, so he can go in and announce their arrival. Tang Wu refuses and walks up the stairs directly, pointing out that the clan head was already said to be waiting. He pushes open the doors and enters. Inside, an older man is speaking with a yellow-haired woman. When the man sees Tang Wu, he reacts with surprise and greets him as his uncle. He approaches and welcomes him, saying it has been a long time. Tang Wu responds by criticizing the undignified behavior of a clan head running around, but admits it is good to see him again. The man laughs and remarks that Tang Wu has not changed. From a distance, Tang Wu observes them and wonders if her grandfather and the clan head were always that close. The yellow-haired woman notices Tang Wu and approaches her, greeting her warmly. Tang Wu replies that she seems to have become even prettier. The woman thanks her and asks if she's been well. Du Hyo-ok coughs to draw attention and explains that earlier he was too flustered to introduce himself properly, stating that his name is Du Hyo-ok. Tang Wu introduces herself as Tang Wu and jokingly asks if she may call him brother-in-law. Namgung Hai becomes embarrassed while Du Hyo-ok laughs and says that the title sounds fine. Tang Wu remarks that she never expected someone shy like Hai to get married before her. Hai becomes more embarrassed by the teasing. Hai then looks toward the protagonist and asks who he is. Tang Wu begins to explain, but the protagonist steps forward first and introduces himself as Tang Sam. Du Hyo-ok greets him and offers his hand. The protagonist pauses for a moment with caution before shaking his hand and smiling. Du Hyo-ok then mentions that he plans to go to Soho Lake that night with Hai and suggests that they all go together, including Tang Sam. The scene shifts to the shores of Soho Lake. The lake is illuminated by many small lamps floating across the water. From a ship on the lake, the group watches the scenery with interest. Tang Wu looks at the view and expresses excitement at how beautiful it is. Du Hyo-ok explains that the lake is well known for its scenery and that the night view is especially famous. Namgung Hai also admires the sight of the moon reflected across the lake. While the two women continue talking, Du Hyo-ok approaches Tang Sam and suggests that since the ladies are chatting, the men should have a drink. He says he will bring some liquor and leaves. Tang Sam watches him from behind and thinks about Du Hyo-ok. On the surface, he is the man who will soon become the Namgung clan's son-in-law, but to Tang Sam it is clear that Du Hyo-ok is hiding something. He considers him a predator, concealing his true nature, and suspects that someone of that level must be planning something significant. He feels that he has stepped into a larger hidden scheme. At that moment, The system informs him that an enemy with a level difference of 10 or more has entered within 20 meters. Tang Sam looks toward the entrance of the ship with confusion and begins observing the surroundings carefully. He concludes that the detected enemy is not Do Hyo-ok. Since the ship is only about 25 meters long and 5 meters high, the only possible location is the deck below. Do Hyo-ok soon returns carrying liquor and explains that it took him a little longer because the drink was stored in an unusual place. Tang Sam realizes that a new enemy other than Do Hyo-ok has appeared. Do Hyo-ok presents a rare drink called Golden Bud Liquor and offers it specifically to Tang Sam. Tang Sam pauses briefly, then politely says he is not feeling well and asks if he can walk around the ship for a moment. Do Hyo-ok agrees and tells him that if he asks the boatman, he can go wherever he wants on the ship. Tang Sam begins walking around the ship. As he moves, the system continues notifying him that an enemy with a level difference of 10 or more is within 20 meters, with a measured distance decreasing from 14 meters down toward 11. Tang Sam thinks that the distance to the enemy should be increasing as he walks away, but instead the distance begins to decrease. The system continues updating the distance as it drops from 6 meters to 3, then down to 1. Tang Sam realizes that this means there are now 2 enemies of that level nearby. Another notification appears, again counting down the distance from 4 meters to 1. From these repeated detections, Tang Sam concludes that including Do Hyo-ok, there are 5 enemies with a level difference of 10 or more on the ship. He then moves to the outside railing of the ship and quietly observes the lake while thinking about the situation. If their goal had been to kidnap Namgung Hai, they would have already acted. The fact that they have not taken action yet means something else must be happening. Looking toward the large buildings of the city, the protagonist considers the situation again. From what he has observed, there is a high possibility that the real target is not Namgung Hai, but the Namgung clan itself. Every one of the enemies detected has a level difference of at least 10 compared to him. Their true level could be 20 or even 30. If 4 people of that level are planning to invade the Namgung clan, it could lead to the clan's downfall. He realizes he is caught between 2 sides. Tang Wu stands with the Namgung clan, while the enemies preparing the attack are already ahead of him. Thinking about the situation, he remarks to himself that he is truly stuck between 2 opposing forces. With the ship approaching its destination, he decides he has to move before they arrive. The scene then shifts to several ships moving toward the Namgung clan city. Inside the city, a group of soldiers approaches a building. When they reach the entrance, one of the soldiers questions their leader, squad leader Gozangong, asking whether it is really necessary to keep checking everything along the way, suggesting that it feels excessive. The squad leader immediately reacts with anger, accusing the soldier of disobeying orders and asking if it is difficult to simply follow instructions and inspect every location. He grabs the soldier by the head. The soldier quickly tries to explain that he only meant it seemed like a waste of time. The leader responds that with the wedding approaching, it is natural to inspect the area repeatedly to ensure security. He then throws the soldier aside and orders him to stop complaining. Another soldier tells the complaining one to stop whining and hand over the lantern, asking if it is his first day. The 2 soldiers then proceed into the building. Watching them go, the squad leader complains to himself that the task is tedious. He remarks that a man should be cutting off enemy heads while singing, not wasting time on inspections, and says that if an enemy appeared, at least he would not be this bored. Inside the underground tunnel, the 2 soldiers walk forward with a candle lighting the way. One of them complains that everyone else is drinking while they are stuck doing this job, and asks the rookie what he thinks. At that moment, the protagonist suddenly appears and blows out the candle. The tunnel immediately becomes dark. One of the soldiers panics and shouts that there is an enemy. The protagonist instantly attacks, killing one soldier with his sword. The other soldier becomes terrified and tries to escape, but the protagonist quickly kills him as well. Outside the tunnel, the squad leader waits and begins to yawn. He wonders why the soldiers are taking so long and suspects they might be slacking off. He picks up a wooden torch and decides to enter the tunnel himself, saying he will deal with them when he finds them. As he walks deeper inside, he suddenly notices a severed human arm on the ground. Shocked, he realizes what it is and begins to panic. He calls out for the soldiers, shouting the names of the rookie and Dachel. Continuing deeper into the tunnel, he finally sees the scene ahead and becomes completely terrified. The protagonist is arranging the severed body parts of the soldiers he killed, placing them on spears while examining the pieces and searching for a missing arm. The squad leader carefully looks at the bodies and begins trembling in fear. The protagonist hears his voice, turns toward him, and calmly tells him that the missing arm has arrived. The squad leader immediately charges forward to attack. The protagonist equips his sword and steps in to meet him. Both face each other with clear killing intent before the squad leader closes the distance and delivers a heavy strike. The protagonist blocks it, but the force behind the attack makes it clear that his opponent is stronger than expected. With a powerful follow-up swing, the squad leader pushes the protagonist back, forcing him to slide across the ground. Recognizing him, the squad leader questions his actions, pointing out that he arrived alongside Tang Wu. The protagonist remains silent at first, then states that he is acting for the sake of the Namgung clan. The explanation only angers the squad leader further. He points out the bodies impaled in the tunnel and rejects the justification entirely. His anger rises as he prepares to kill without restraint. Activating his technique, blue energy begins to flow from his body as he uses the Heavenly Wind sword technique. At the same time, the protagonist activates his own skill, red energy spreading around him as he prepares the second form of his three elements sword technique. Both advance at the same time. The squad leader uses Heavenly Wind wandering clouds, while the protagonist counters with a direct strike aimed at the yellow dragon. Their attacks collide, creating a violent explosion that shakes the tunnel and sends water splashing in every direction. The impact throws both of them backward. Recovering first, the squad leader unleashes a series of rapid slashes, sending multiple energy attacks toward the protagonist. The barrage lands before the protagonist can properly react, severely injuring him and throwing his body into the air before crashing him into the wall. He briefly checks his condition and realizes the extent of the damage. The squad leader does not give him time to recover and rushes in again, delivering another powerful strike. The protagonist attempts to evade by flipping away, but the attack still connects. The blow cuts into him, severing his fingers and knocking the sword from his hand. Seeing this, the squad leader laughs, believing the fight is already decided now that the protagonist is unarmed. At that moment, the protagonist suddenly throws his sword. The squad leader narrowly avoids a direct hit, but the blade still grazes his cheek, leaving a shallow cut and forcing him back. Confused, he realizes the sword should not have been in the protagonist's hand at all. The unexpected attack unsettles him as he touches the wound, understanding how close it came to being far worse. Without hesitation, the protagonist closes the distance again and swings his blade horizontally with full force. The squad leader raises his blade and blocks the incoming strike. At the final moment, the protagonist's sword disappears. The swing loses its target, causing the squad leader to stumble forward and fall. He quickly regains his footing, but fear sets in as he realizes the same phenomenon has happened again. Before he can react, the protagonist delivers a heavy blow to his head. The impact sends the squad leader crashing through the wall and into the air. The protagonist immediately follows, leaping out after him and closing the distance midair with his sword ready. As the blade approaches, the squad leader panics, realizing he may not survive the next strike. However, the attack only leaves a shallow cut across his other cheek. The protagonist's strength has dropped due to accumulated injuries, and he loses momentum, falling back toward the ground. The squad leader lands safely, while the protagonist crashes down heavily, his body already pushed to its limit. Seeing this, the squad leader assumes the fight is over. He laughs, convinced that the final exchange has exhausted his opponent. The protagonist slowly rises despite his condition, breathing heavily as he assesses himself. His injuries are severe, and his condition is critical. At the same time, he realizes his accumulated experience is nearly full. A possibility forms in his mind. Without hesitation, he charges forward again. The squad leader responds by preparing his strongest technique. Blue energy gathers intensely around his blade as he activates the final form of the Heavenly Wind sword technique. He swings, releasing multiple condensed energy attacks toward the approaching opponent. The protagonist continues forward despite the incoming strikes. The attacks land directly, cutting through him and severing both of his hands. His body collapses to the ground. The squad leader closes the distance and kicks him in the chest, pinning him down. Confident in his victory, he prepares to finish the fight and raises his sword toward the protagonist's head. At that moment, something feels wrong. The protagonist is still smiling. A faint blue glow begins to emerge from his mouth. As the squad leader notices it, his expression shifts, but he is too late to react. In the next instant, a blade shoots out from the protagonist's mouth and pierces straight through the squad leader's head. The attack lands cleanly, ending the fight immediately. The body collapses without resistance. The moment the kill is completed, the protagonist's condition changes. His strength increases, and his body begins to emit blue energy. A surge of light descends from above and strikes him, spreading outward in a powerful wave. The burst of energy expands across the surrounding area, illuminating the entire city. People throughout the city notice the sudden light and react in shock. Elsewhere, even those far from the scene notice the phenomenon. Back in the tunnel, the light fades. The protagonist stands among the remains of the battle. Around him, the bodies he arranged form a deliberate pattern. He looks at it briefly, then spreads his arms slightly, satisfied with the result. Meanwhile, at the Danri clan estate, the entire compound is engulfed in flames. Buildings burn as attackers flood the grounds, overwhelming the clan's defenses. The defending soldiers are cut down one after another, unable to resist the assault. In the midst of the chaos, Danri Chunwoo appears with his sword drawn. He looks around, trying to understand the sudden destruction. From within the fire, a figure steps forward and approaches him. As the person comes into view, the clan leader is visibly shaken. He demands to know their identity and the reason for the attack, but before he can finish, the attacker strikes. The blade cuts through his neck in a single motion. His head falls, followed by his body collapsing onto the ground. The attacker turns away from the corpse and looks toward the burning estate. He delivers a message to be passed along, stating that the Danri clan has been wiped out and that the stratagem should begin. Elsewhere, in a forest, Pega Hyol finishes his activity and pushes aside the woman beside him. Noticing her clothing, he realizes she was from the Danri clan and dismisses it as insignificant. At that moment, someone appears behind him. He turns and recognizes the arrival, noting that the task has already been completed. While getting dressed, he considers the situation, particularly the unusual signal that appeared earlier, and suspects that the Namgung clan may have become aware of the plan. He immediately gives orders to block all routes leading into Anhui and to begin the first stratagem. Behind him, a group of soldiers gathers, ready to move. The scene shifts back to the tunnel. Several soldiers stand in front of the display created by the protagonist. The bodies arranged on spears form a deliberate pattern, and the sight leaves them shocked. One of them reads the message written in blood across the wall. The words describe the moon, the emperor, and a wanderer becoming king, with the fall occurring under a full moon. The clan leader present at the scene listens and acknowledges that while the identity of the culprit is unknown, it is clear that someone is targeting the Namgung clan. He orders increased patrols and heightened vigilance as the wedding approaches, instructing his men to report anything unusual directly to him. As he leaves the tunnel, he reflects on the meaning behind the message. The emperor likely refers to the Namgung clan, and the full moon points to the wedding day. The remaining phrase troubles him, as he tries to determine who the one who walks slowly could be and what exactly is about to unfold. Inside the Namgung clan's main hall, tension rises as the leaders argue. Namgung Young, the Sky Sword Unit leader, slams his fist onto the table and insists that everything is a setup. He points out that Du Hyo-ok has not even been at the clan for an entire year and rejects the idea of suspecting him based on a strange message. To him, doubting their future son-in-law over such evidence would only bring ridicule upon the Namgung clan. Opposing him, Namgung In, the Limitless Sword Unit leader, argues that the message cannot be ignored. He focuses on the meaning behind the words left behind, stating that the wanderer clearly refers to Du Hyo-ok. He explains that the intruder infiltrated the clan, killed warriors, and deliberately left a message. This indicates a purpose beyond simple infiltration. The strange beam of light seen the previous night further supports the idea that something deliberate is unfolding. Namgung Young grows more enraged, refusing to accept imprisoning Du Hyo-ok based on uncertain claims. He warns that if this turns out to be a setup, it would damage both the clan's honor and their relationship with Namgung Hai. The clan leader intervenes and stops the argument. He acknowledges that both sides have valid points. The intruder is suspicious, but even a small possibility cannot be ignored. He reminds them that the Thunder Squad and Wind Unit are already investigating the matter. Another member confirms that the Heavenly Thunder Squad has been sent to scout the Hefei region. If any force is planning something during the full moon, there should already be signs. At that moment, a soldier rushes into the hall and delivers an urgent report. The person entering is Namgung-hu, the Heavenly Thunder Squad leader. Breathing heavily, he reports that all members sent for investigation have failed to return. They were expected back within a set time, but none of them came back. The room falls into shock. When asked what he concluded from this, Namgung-hu states that the Namgung clan is surrounded by enemies. The statement unsettles everyone present. Namgung-yung immediately demands to know who could possibly surround them. The clan leader begins to consider possibilities, but dismisses known forces such as the Yangtze groups, as they would not move inland and are already under truce. Namgung-yung questions what kind of force could even gather enough manpower in Anhui to encircle the Namgung clan. Namgung then arrives at a conclusion. There is only one force in all of Murim capable of such a feat, the Heavenly Demon Castle. The scene shifts away. Moving through the city toward the Namgung clan castle, the protagonist walks calmly. The words left behind earlier repeat in his mind, forming a clear pattern. He stops briefly, a faint smile appearing on his face as he repeats the meaning to himself. The full moon approaches, and the pieces of the plan begin to align. At the Namgung clan's training ground the next morning, the protagonist stands alone, forming a hand sign as blue energy begins to radiate from his palms. He closes his eyes and focuses inward. The flow of chi inside his body begins to move along the pathways that were forcefully created during the ritual. As he concentrates, the previous battle inside the tunnel replays vividly in his mind. Within that mental reconstruction, he faces the squad leader again. He watches each movement carefully, dodging an incoming strike. The sequence continues as the opponent attacks again. This time he avoids the initial blow, but is still struck at the final moment and slammed into the wall. He recognizes the flaw immediately. If the timing of the opponent's techniques had been more precise, the outcome would have been complete defeat. Understanding this, he begins adjusting his movements within the imagined battle. He activates every pressure point in his body and responds differently. This time, his counterattack lands cleanly. The strike overwhelms the opponent, severing his limbs and sending him crashing through the wall. He follows through, stepping out into the open space of the imagined battlefield and confirming the result of the fight. With that, the mental simulation ends. Back in reality, he exhales and steadies himself. The training has allowed him to analyze and internalize the flow of the battle. The temporary pathways created in his body have already begun to show their effectiveness. Even though they are artificial, the understanding gained through repetition is being embedded into his movements. With enough practice, he realizes he can reproduce martial techniques instead of merely imitating them. While focusing the energy between his palms again, a new realization forms regarding his current growth. At that moment, information appears before him, indicating that he has reached a new stage. His level has increased enough to unlock a class change condition. The requirement is clear. He must defeat 100 enemies of level 10 or higher. He assesses the condition calmly. The enemies he faced recently fall within that range, but even then, the fights were not easy. The last opponent was significantly stronger, and reaching the required count will not be simple. Before he can continue his thoughts, a loud explosion erupts from a nearby building, breaking the silence of the training ground. The scene shifts to earlier. Do Hyooke walks through the area near the tunnel entrance where the bodies were discovered. The place is now heavily guarded, with a large number of warriors securing the surroundings. He observes the situation briefly, taking in the increased security, then turns and walks away without drawing attention. As he moves through the city, he reflects on the sudden changes. The appearance of the bright signal has tightened security and drawn more forces into the area. The situation has become unstable, and he realizes that he needs to relay this development to the others as soon as possible. As Do Hyooke move through the area, a voice suddenly calls out to him. He turns and recognizes Namgung-in, the Mu-Ae Sword Division leader. The unexpected encounter immediately puts him on alert, though he maintains a calm expression. He offers a casual explanation, claiming he came to check the so-called blessing light that had appeared earlier. Namgung-in listens and responds lightly, but his tone carries intent. At a subtle signal, the surrounding soldiers prepare themselves, gripping their weapons. Do Hyooke does not respond further. Seeing the silence as confirmation, Namgung-in orders him to come along to the Emperor's Hall, making it clear that refusal is not an option. He turns and begins to leave with his men. For a brief moment, Do Hyo-ok remains still. Then, under his breath, he mutters that he had finally found Shell he liked. His expression shifts, and he acknowledges that he has been discovered. Nam-gung-in reacts instantly, drawing his sword and moving in to attack. At that exact moment, a massive explosion erupts from the direction of the Emperor's Hall. The shockwave draws everyone's attention, and all eyes turn toward the source. The destruction is immediate and overwhelming. Before anyone can process it, a powerful presence emerges behind Nam-gung-in. Do Hyo-ok rises into the air, his body radiating intense golden energy. The shift in presence is undeniable. Nam-gung-in is visibly shaken as he turns to face him. Without hesitation, Do Hyo-ok points his sword forward and releases a condensed lightning attack. The strike lands instantly, engulfing the area behind Nam-gung-in and causing massive destruction. The explosion draws civilians from nearby areas. As they gather and witness the scene, confusion quickly turns into fear when they recognize Do Hyo-ok. Nam-gung-in is thrown back by the force, crashing into a wall and suffering severe injuries. Even accounting for the surprise, the sheer power of the attack leaves him in disbelief. Do Hyo-ok advances slowly, still radiating energy. A nearby civilian, unable to understand the situation, steps forward and tries to stop him. Before he can finish, Do Hyo-ok swings his blade and cuts him down instantly. Panic spreads. The gathered crowd breaks apart, fleeing in all directions as fear takes hold. Shouts echo through the streets as people run, realizing the danger too late. Do Hyo-ok watches them with a satisfied expression. Nam-gung-in, struggling to remain conscious, questions his identity, realizing that the man before him is no longer the same person they knew. Do Hyo-ok offers no explanation. He simply moves forward to finish him. As the attack is about to land, a figure intervenes. Tang-woo appears at the final moment, stopping the strike. A poison dart is driven into Do Hyo-ok's hand, disrupting his movement, while Tang-woo blocks the incoming blade with precise control. He stands between them, halting the attack and confronting Do Hyo-ok directly. Tang-woo stands firmly on Do Hyo-ok's blade and demands to know what he is doing. Their auras surge outward and collide, the pressure between them distorting the air. At that moment, the protagonist arrives and observes the confrontation. He immediately recognizes that Tang-woo has stepped in, just as expected. Do Hyo-ok struggles against the poison dart embedded in his hand. His body resists, but the restraint holds him in place for a moment. Then, with a sudden release of power, a burst of golden energy erupts from him, forcing Tang-woo backward. Tang-woo stabilizes himself midair and lands without injury. Nam-gung-in, still injured on the ground, expresses his relief. Tang-woo remarks coldly that the state of Murim has deteriorated, noting how a man in the position of a son-in-law could turn on his own allies. Do Hyo-ok advances again, golden energy flaring around him. He tears away the upper part of his clothing, revealing his body as he speaks with a twisted calm, treating betrayal as something natural within Jianghu. Another explosion echoes from elsewhere in the compound, adding to the growing chaos. Tang-woo gathers multiple poison darts around him, his expression hardening. He gives a final chance for an explanation, demanding Do Hyo-ok reveal his identity and intentions. Do Hyo-ok shows no urgency to answer. Instead, he acknowledges Tang-woo's technique with interest, but makes it clear he has no intention of continuing the fight here. Watching closely, the protagonist realizes that Do Hyo-ok is preparing to retreat. It also becomes clear that his presence here has a specific purpose, as if he has been searching for something. At that moment, Tang-woo appears nearby, confused by the situation and drawn toward the commotion. The protagonist notices her arrival and immediately understands the connection. Do Hyo-ok's attention shifts instantly. He locks onto her and moves without hesitation. Tang-woo reacts with anger and prepares to intercept, while the protagonist moves at the same time, rushing toward her position. Midway through his advance, Do Hyo-ok throws his sword, infused with condensed golden energy. The weapon travels like a bolt of lightning straight toward Tang-woo. Tang-woo is caught off guard by the sudden change in attack. Tang-woo freezes, unable to react as the strike closes in. Before it reaches her, the protagonist steps in front of her and shields her body, pulling her in to block the attack. The impact creates a violent explosion of light, tearing into the ground and forming a deep crater. As the dust settles, Tang Wu rushes forward, calling out in urgency. When he reaches the crater, he stops. At its center, the protagonist is seated, holding Tang Hua in his arms. She is unconscious but alive. Tang Wu approaches and calls out to the protagonist, asking if he was the one who saved Tang Hua. Without replying, the protagonist walks forward, still holding her, and carefully hands her over. Tang Wu receives her and looks at him with a brief, uncertain expression before his face softens. He begins to thank him, but his words are cut short. Laughter echoes from above. Du Hyo-ok sits on top of a nearby building, watching them with a distorted, almost playful expression. Tang Wu turns toward him, irritation immediately rising. The protagonist studies him quietly and recognizes the difference in presence. The man is not ordinary. His strength is enough to stand against Tang Wu directly. Du Hyo-ok addresses Tang Wu briefly, then remarks that he will return again soon. His tone is casual but deliberate. As he turns to leave, something catches his attention. He pauses and looks back toward the protagonist. A faint but heavy darkness leaks from the protagonist's body. His face is partially hidden, but a restrained, unsettling smile remains. Du Hyo-ok watches him for a moment, then understands. He identifies him as the one responsible for the pillar of light from the previous night and the one who interfered with his plans. He acknowledges it without hesitation, then casually promises they will meet again. With a surge of golden energy, he launches himself into the air and disappears. Tang Wu reacts immediately, anger rising as he attempts to pursue, but stops when Tang Hua stirs in his arms. She regains consciousness weakly, calling out to him. Realizing the situation, Tang Wu abandons the chase and admits they have been outplayed. The scene shifts to the Emperor's Hall. The building is heavily damaged, its structure partially collapsed from the explosions. The remaining soldiers gather among the injured and the dead. The clan leader sits among them, observing the destruction and reflecting on the situation. He concludes that everything, from Du Hyo-ok's actions to his marriage into the clan, had been planned in advance. With their communication lines cut and their defensive formation destroyed, the Namgung clan is now completely trapped. Namgung enters the hall and proposes their options: fight, flee, or send a messenger. The clan leader immediately dismisses the first two, recognizing they are no longer viable. Namgung explains that sending a messenger to the Murim Alliance is the only realistic choice. Reinforcements could arrive within days if the message is delivered successfully. The problem remains who can break through the siege. He suggests that only someone of exceptional ability could manage it. The clan leader understands the implication, but questions whether even Tang Wu could accomplish such a task alone. After a brief pause, Namgung presents the final part of his plan. They will use the wedding guests currently inside the clan, hundreds of people who are already desperate to escape, as part of the strategy. Night settles over the Namgung clan as the scene shifts to a palace near a river that runs beneath a mountain cliff. Inside, the atmosphere is tense. The clan leader sits in silence while Tang Wu stands nearby. The protagonist and Tang Hua remain close, observing without speaking. The clan leader glances toward the protagonist and questions his presence. Tang Wu answers directly, stating that the boy now carries the Tang family name and can be trusted, urging him to continue without concern. After a brief pause, the clan leader lowers himself and makes a formal request. He asks Tang Wu to leave with the wedding guests through Soho Lake and secure reinforcements. Tang Wu reacts with irritation, immediately pointing out the cost of such a plan. He knows that many would die attempting it. Still, he does not reject the idea outright. The clan leader explains further. If they travel by water from Soho Lake to the Yangtze River, they can seek aid from the 18 strongholds that control the waterways. Preparations have already been made, ships have been deployed, and the clan's guests and servants have been gathered at the southern water gate. Tang Wu processes this and asks when they are to depart. The answer is immediate. There is no time left. They must leave that very night. Tang Wu falls silent for a moment, then turns and begins to walk away, accepting the responsibility without further argument. He prepares to act. Before he leaves, the clan leader calls out once more. He asks that Namgung be taken along as well. He does not want her to witness what is about to happen. Tang Wu stops and turns back, asking if that is all. The clan leader's composure breaks. Fear shows clearly as he admits the truth, He is not certain the clan can survive what is coming. There is doubt that they can even endure for 10 days. Tang Wu responds sharply, his anger rising. He rejects the idea outright and declares that as long as he is present, the clan will not fall so easily. He orders the clan leader to endure, to hold on no matter what, and makes it clear that he will return with reinforcements. The decision is made. The next phase begins. Tang Hua calls out loudly as Tang Wu leaves, her voice filled with urgency, but he does not stop. He exits without turning back. Inside the palace, the clan leader remains seated, his expression heavy and quiet. The weight of the decision lingers in the room. Nearby, the protagonist watches him in silence, taking in everything that was said. The scene shifts. The protagonist now stands alone on a mountain cliff near the palace, overlooking the river under the moonlight. The water reflects the night sky as he remains still, thinking. He considers the situation calmly. Saving Tang Hua had its value, as it allowed him to hear the Namgung clan's plan directly. But the plan itself is unstable and filled with uncertainty. Behind him, Tang Hua steps out of the palace. She is visibly tense, running her hands through her hair as she mutters to herself, unable to understand her grandfather's intentions. As she notices the protagonist standing there, she immediately composes herself, suppressing her frustration. She approaches and stands beside him at the edge of the cliff. Both remain silent, facing the river. The silence stretches. Tang Hua grows increasingly uncomfortable, unable to read his expression or thoughts. The awkwardness builds until she finally forces herself to speak. Nervously, she thanks him for saving her. Even then, she quickly adds that he should not misunderstand her intentions, explaining that she simply did not want to lose the chance to say it. The protagonist does not respond. He only looks at her, remaining as unreadable as before. The scene shifts again. On another cliff overlooking the same city, Pega Hyol stands facing the river. The city lights flicker below. A presence appears behind him. He recognizes it immediately and addresses the figure, referring to him as Shifting Shadow or Du Hyo-ok, and asks for an explanation. Du Hyo-ok stands beside him, calm and composed, responding as if nothing has gone wrong. Pega Hyol counters, pointing out the obvious failure, for Shadow's lost, the objective incomplete, and the fact that Du Hyo-ok himself has returned. Du Hyo-ok dismisses this, explaining that the true purpose of the first stratagem was not the immediate destruction, but positioning himself as a hero within the Orthodox faction. Then he states that his current situation does not prevent that outcome. At that moment, a strange surge of energy begins to emanate from his body. His form distorts unnaturally, shifting and changing. The transformation continues until his appearance completely alters. Within moments, he takes on the form of Namgung Hai. Standing there in her likeness, he calmly explains that in this form, he no longer needs the original. With her identity, he can naturally position himself as the successor of the Namgung clan. Pega Hyol watches, visibly shocked, as the realization sets in. Pega Hyol bursts into loud laughter, his voice echoing across the cliff. His reaction is unrestrained as he calls the plan insane, yet praises it at the same time. As his laughter settles, he studies the transformed figure more carefully and comments on the appearance, noting that the reputation of Anhue's first beauty is not exaggerated. His gaze lingers in a way that makes his intent clear. Du Hyo-ok pauses, visibly taken aback for a brief moment. Then his expression hardens, irritation turning into open anger as he snaps back at him. Pega Hyol, however, remains unfazed, brushing it off with crude indifference. To him, appearance alone is enough, regardless of anything else. The tension between them spikes instantly. Their auras flare, colliding in the space between them as hostility rises. Before it escalates further, a hawk descends from above. Both of them shift their attention to it. The bird lands calmly on Pega Hyol's wrist. Du Hyo-ok immediately recognizes the source of the message. After reading it, Pega Hyol confirms that the ships have already set sail. He releases the hawk back into the sky and decides to move, asking what Du Hyo-ok intends to do next. Du Hyo-ok answers that he will follow the hawk. Pega Hyol questions the decision, suggesting that returning to the Namgung clan would be more worthwhile. Du Hyo-ok disagrees, stating that something more interesting lies elsewhere. Pega Hyol presses further, mentioning Tang Wu and dismissing the idea that a single master could outweigh the importance of the entire Namgung clan. Then something clicks in his mind. He recalls the strange pillar of light and realizes there might be a connection. He demands to know if Du Hyook has identified its source. Du Hyook refuses to answer. Without giving anything away, he launches himself into the air and disappears. Pega Hyol calls out after him, but there is no response. Left alone on the cliff, he stands in irritation as the situation slips beyond his control. The scene shifts. Several ships are already moving across the river, cutting through the dark water onto the night sky. On one of them, Tang Wu stands alongside Tang Hua and the protagonist. The group remains unaware that they are being watched. From the distant shore, a gray-haired man with a scarred face observes them through a viewing device. After confirming what he sees, he immediately turns and runs toward the dock. He boards another ship where his superior is waiting and reports that the target has been confirmed. At his words, the order is given without hesitation. The ships begin to mobilize. At the center of it all stands their leader, a gray-haired, muscular woman marked with numerous scars. She commands the fleet with calm authority. She is the supreme stronghold chief of the 18 waterway strongholds of the Yangtze River, known as Water Shadow. The scene continues aboard the ship. Tang Wu stands near the railing, watching the dark river ahead. The protagonist glances toward Tang Hua and Namgung Hai, quietly assessing the situation. In his mind, he reaches a clear conclusion. No matter how powerful Tang Wu is, in a true life-and-death situation, the two girls would become a burden. And if a choice had to be made between the three of them, he knows he would be the one abandoned. With that understanding, he prepares himself mentally. The ships continue moving forward across the river. Tang Wu remains focused on the surroundings. After a long stretch of silence, he notes that something feels wrong. There has not been a single sign of enemies along the route. Given the scale of the force capable of surrounding the Namgung clan, such an absence does not make sense. He immediately orders precautions. At his command, the speed of the ships is reduced. As the crew adjusts the sails and movement, one of the workers suddenly notices something in the distance and calls out. Lights appear ahead. Everyone looks forward. Dozens of brightly lit ships are approaching them across the water. Excitement spreads instantly among the passengers. Many assume that reinforcements have arrived, believing the Namgung clan's message must have reached its allies. Relief begins to spread across the ships. Tang Wu, however, does not react the same way. He narrows his gaze and studies the approaching fleet more carefully. The flags become visible, revealing the identity of the incoming force, the 18 waterway strongholds of the Yangtze River. For a brief moment, it seems to match what was expected, but something feels off. Tang Wu notices the number of ships and their formation. Instead of approaching like reinforcements, they are positioned in a way that blocks the path ahead. He processes it quickly. There were no enemies along the route, and now an entire fleet stands directly in their way. The realization begins to settle that this is not a rescue. Tang Wu's expression hardens as the realization fully sets in. He immediately raises his voice and warns everyone that the incoming fleet is not there to help. The excitement among the people breaks into confusion as he urgently orders them to turn the ships around. His tone leaves no room for doubt. These are enemies, and they need to retreat at once. Before the ships can properly respond, the situation escalates. On the opposing fleet, the leader, Water Shadow, stands at the front of her ship, calmly observing the target. Around her, rows of soldiers are already prepared, bows drawn and aimed. At her command, the attack begins. Thousands of flaming arrows are released at once, filling the sky as they descend toward Tang Wu's fleet. The impact is immediate and devastating. Arrows strike the ships, setting them ablaze and cutting down people across the decks. Panic spreads as fire begins to consume the vessels. Tang Wu reacts instantly. With his power, he forms a protective barrier around his ship, deflecting the incoming flames and shielding those closest to him. Even so, the surrounding ships continue to burn and collapse under the assault. The protagonist watches the destruction unfold, unable to ignore the scale of the attack. Tang Wu raises his voice again, trying to regain control of the situation and order a retreat. But as he turns, he notices something worse. More enemy ships are closing in from behind. The fleet is surrounded. Tang Hua realizes it at the same time and calls out in panic. There is no clear path forward or backward. Seeing no other option, Tang Wu immediately redirects the plan. He orders everyone to move toward the riverbank, aiming to escape on a land while there is still time. Before they can act, another attack lands. Water Shadow's ship crashes into one of theirs. From the impact point, she launches herself into the air and lands directly onto the enemy's ship. In a single motion, she strikes down multiple people upon landing. She gives a simple order. Her soldiers follow without hesitation, leaping across from their ships and engaging in close combat. The remaining vessels are quickly overrun as fire and blades spread across the fleet. Watching everything collapse, Tang Wu's anger rises as the situation turns completely against them. As the ships burn and chaos spreads across the river, Tang Wu makes a sudden decision. He moves straight toward Namgung Hai and, without hesitation, uses his technique to place a poisonous dart at her neck, rendering her unconscious. Lifting her onto his shoulder, he turns and begins moving. Tang Wu runs after him, confused and alarmed, demanding to know what he is doing. He answers briefly. They are heading for the shore. She immediately realizes the implication. Carrying all three of them in this situation is impossible. She points it out, but Tang Wu corrects her. He will only take two. The meaning becomes clear. Tang Wu turns toward the protagonist. Tang Wu approaches him and speaks plainly. He admits that he had been greedy for his talent and had planted a goo inside him to control him for the sake of the Tang clan. But now, he acknowledges that he has grown attached in a way he did not intend. Even so, his decision does not change. He states it without hesitation. He will not kill him, but he will not save him either. With that, Tang Wu steps onto the railing of the burning ship. Tang Wu hesitates, clearly torn, but the situation leaves no room for choice. After a brief moment, she turns away and follows him. Tang Wu leaps from the ship toward the distant shore, carrying Namgung Hai. After a final hesitation, Tang Wu also jumps, leaving behind the burning wreck. The protagonist remains alone. The flames crackle around him as the ship continues to collapse. He stands still for a moment, then his expression shifts slightly. With no one watching, he quietly remarks that it is time to begin. At that moment, an enemy soldier lands on the ship and charges toward him. The protagonist draws his sword and cuts him down in a single strike. Without pause, he grabs the body and drags it into a nearby room. There, he changes into the soldier's clothes and deliberately marks his own face with scars, altering his appearance. Outside, the destruction is nearly complete. The enemy forces continue their sweep, ensuring no survivors remain. Soon after, the protagonist steps onto another ship where enemy soldiers are finishing off the remaining people. One of them notices him and calls out, seeing his battered appearance. The protagonist looks at him and responds calmly, with a faint, controlled smile, stating that he is fine. Meanwhile, the surviving passengers from Tang Wu's fleet desperately swim toward the shore, struggling through the burning wreckage and waves. At the same time, Tang Wu continues gliding through the air toward the island while carrying the unconscious Namgung Hai. As he nears the shore, he suddenly notices lights waiting below. Figures holding fire lamps stand hidden along the coastline. The moment he recognizes them, his expression darkens. The forces of the Heavenly Demon Castle had already positioned troops on land as well. Before landing, Tang Wu immediately activates his poison dart technique. A violent burst of energy erupts around him as countless poison darts shoot downward toward the waiting enemies. The projectiles tear through the shoreline forces and kill them almost instantly. After clearing the path, Tang Wu lands on the ground and exhales briefly. Soon after, the remaining survivors reach the shore in terrible condition. Tang Wu and Ji Daehyo arrive exhausted alongside the others. Without wasting time, Tang Wu begins moving deeper toward the forest while carrying Namgung Hai over his shoulder, ordering everyone to hurry. The survivors quickly follow behind him. The scene shifts back to the enemy ships. Disguised among the enemy soldiers, the protagonist stands quietly while a notification appears before him. The class advancement quest updates. His current completion count rises to 18 out of 100. Seeing the number, he immediately realizes that some of the enemies killed during the battle met the quest conditions. Before he can think further, one of the enemy soldiers notices the state of his face and throws him a cloth, telling him to at least cover himself. The protagonist calmly accepts it and wraps the cloth around his face. At that moment, a large, rough-looking man with twisted hair and a heavy beard steps onto the ship. His appearance immediately changes the atmosphere. The surrounding soldiers bow at once, addressing him as the Vice Stronghold leader. He casually looks around at the blood-covered ship and comments on the slaughter before asking for a report. One of the soldiers explains that everyone aboard the ships has been killed, but Tang Wu and several survivors managed to escape onto the shore. The vice leader scratches his head and remarks that he will need to report this to the stronghold leader. He orders the soldiers to wait for further instructions. The soldiers obey immediately. From a distance, the protagonist silently watches the exchange, gathering information. Elsewhere on the fleet, Water Shadow stands near the railing of her ship, staring out toward the dark shoreline. The vice leader approaches her and stands at her side. Without even turning toward him, Water Shadow remarks that he is late and addresses him directly as Shifting Shadow. He reacts with slight surprise, asking if she already knew. Water Shadow explains that Ash Shadow had informed her beforehand. Then she calmly adds that no matter what form he takes, man or woman, his smile never changes. The man standing in the appearance of the Vice Stronghold leader was not truly the Vice leader at all, but Shifting Shadow in another disguise, the demonic form of Du Hyo-ok. After hearing Water Shadow's words, Shifting Shadow calmly remarks that he will remember it. He then asks what they plan to do about Tang Wu. Water Shadow explains that everything is proceeding according to plan. Tang Wu is being driven towards Xianzheng Mountain, a place formed between steep mountains and valleys. There, he will eventually be cornered against a cliff with nowhere left to escape. Shifting Shadow immediately understands the trap. With a chaotic smile, he remarks that Tang Wu is likely climbing toward his own grave without even realizing it. Water Shadow tightens her grip on her weapon and orders the remaining forces to prepare for departure. As Shifting Shadow turns to leave, he casually comments that one of the 10 greats facing 2 shadows, or possibly 3, is already excessive, though certainty is always preferable. Then he suddenly pauses. He asks Water Shadow if she has seen anyone unusual, someone with pitch-black eyes, or perhaps a martial artist whose techniques emit light. Water Shadow replies that she is not. As he walks away, Shifting Shadow quietly thinks to himself that every route has already been sealed off, yet the person disappeared without a trace. Still, he concludes that a large enough massacre will eventually reveal the answer. The scene shifts to the mountains of the island. Deep within the forest, a group of enemy soldiers suddenly appears in front of the Black Crow unit. Before the enemy can even attack, Tang Wu reacts instantly. Poisonous darts burst from his technique and sweep through the soldiers, killing the entire group in moments. The sheer brutality of the attack terrifies the remaining members of the Black Crow unit. Even G.I. Daehyo is shocked by how effortlessly Tang Wu eliminated the enemies. Without slowing down, Tang Wu continues moving deeper into the forest while carrying Namgung high over his shoulder. Tang Hua and the others follow behind him. As he walks, he tells G.I. Daehyo that they will continue advancing. G.I. Daehyo watches him move farther ahead, then turns toward his own exhausted unit. Irritation and helplessness show on his face. Finally, he orders the soldiers to rest briefly. The weary soldiers immediately collapse onto the ground to recover. Leaning against a tree, G.I. Daehyo silently reflects on the situation. More than half of the Black Crow unit is already gone, perhaps even more. Danri Hui, who is supposed to join them, has disappeared entirely. At this point, even the survival of the unit itself is uncertain. He realizes they need to return to the Danri clan as quickly as possible. Then footsteps echo through the forest. G.I. Daehyo instantly becomes alert. He draws his sword and orders the remaining soldiers to prepare for battle. The exhausted warriors quickly rise and ready their weapons. G.I. Daehyo demands to know who is there. From behind the trees, a large group of enemy soldiers emerges. The moment he recognizes them, his expression tightens. Pirates. Standing among them with his face concealed beneath a cloth, the protagonist looks directly at G.I. Daehyo and calmly says only one thing. Peekaboo. Both groups stand facing each other in the middle of the forest, weapons raised and ready. The enemy soldiers charge first, rushing toward the exhausted Black Crow unit while shouting for everyone to be killed. G.I. Daehyo immediately leads his men forward as well, yelling at them not to die and promising that they would all survive and return to the Danri clan. The two forces collide violently. In the middle of the chaos, the protagonist suddenly rushes straight toward G.I. Daehyo. His sword swings down with immense force. Daehyo blocks the attack, but the impact drives him backward across the ground. While struggling to stabilize himself, he realizes his body is already nearing its limit and understands that the fight must end quickly. Without hesitation, Daehyo activates his martial art. Blue energy erupts from his body as he uses the single-stream 10-sword style, flying swallow 10 successive swords. The energy spreads through the battlefield like sharp streams of sword force, attacking from multiple directions at once. At first, the protagonist struggles to follow the strange, tentacle-like sword energy, but he quickly adjusts. He narrowly dodges and blocks the incoming attacks one after another. As he continues focusing on Daehyo's movements, his vision sharpens. Now, he can clearly see the path of the sword. From midair, Daehyo charges again and mocks the tricks being used against him. This time, the protagonist perfectly intercepts the attack. In the same motion, he drives a powerful kick into Daehyo's face, sending him flying upward from a force. The protagonist immediately follows up and begins activating the three forces sword technique. Daehyo barely avoids the next strike and instantly counterattacks, thrusting his sword directly toward the protagonist's chest. The blade pierces through perfectly. Thinking he has won, Daehyo declares that the protagonist finally lowered his guard. But his expression changes immediately. The body impaled by his sword is not the protagonist. At the last moment, the protagonist had pulled a corpse from his inventory and positioned it as a shield over his shoulder. Realizing this, Daehyo quickly retreats backward in alarm. He cannot understand how the attack failed despite landing cleanly. The protagonist calmly answers him, recalling words once spoken during another battle. In a fight between martial artists, the one hiding more cards has the advantage. Then he asks if a single hidden dagger was truly all Daehyo had prepared. As Daehyo stares at him, something about the protagonist's eyes begins to feel familiar. He is certain he has seen them before. Before he can fully process the thought, the protagonist opens his inventory again. Multiple daggers appear around him at once. In the next instant, he launches all of them toward Daehyo. Daehyo is caught off guard as the daggers fly toward him from every direction. He manages to block two of them, but several others slice into his body before he can fully defend himself. Pain shoots through him as he stares at the protagonist in disbelief. By now, he is certain his eyes were not deceiving him. The protagonist has been summoning weapons from thin air throughout the battle, using some kind of incomprehensible technique. Before Daehyo can recover, the protagonist lowers his stance and rushes toward him again. At the same moment, another enemy soldier charges in from behind Daehyo, trying to kill him while shouting. Daehyo instantly realizes he is trapped between attacks from both sides and believes there is no way to avoid them. But instead of attacking him, the protagonist suddenly turns and drives his sword straight through the enemy soldier's chest, brutally killing him before the strike can land. With a twisted expression, the protagonist warns the soldier not to interfere with his hunt. Watching this, Daehyo finally recognizes those eyes. The realization strikes him all at once. The horse handler from the Danri clan. Sosum. Fury explodes across his face as he screams the name aloud, unable to believe that someone he once looked down upon had deceived him this entire time. Consumed by rage, Daehyo attacks wildly, demanding to know since when he had been hiding his true nature. The protagonist avoids the first strike with ease. Daehyo follows with another brutal attack using both swords, but this time the protagonist blocks him directly. Still enraged, Daehyo accuses him of being the demon behind the suicide plague in Bonyang as well. The protagonist forcefully throws him backward. Refusing to give up, Daehyo charges once more, shouting that the protagonist was nothing more than a servant who cleaned horse dung in the Danri clan. At that moment, the protagonist changes his weapon. The sword transforms into whip-like blades that spread outward from all directions around Daehyo. Before he can react, both of Daehyo's hands are severed instantly. Shock floods his face. In the next moment, countless cuts appear across his entire body. Blood sprays everywhere as panic overtakes him. He desperately mutters that he still needs to return to the Danri clan. Then his body bursts apart completely. Flesh and blood scatter across the battlefield. The protagonist calmly watches the remains and quietly reflects that the one who hides more always has the advantage. Around them, the Black Crow unit has already been wiped out. One of the enemy soldiers curses loudly, wondering where the reinforcements are. The protagonist notices the same thing. At some point during the battle, the flow of reinforcements had completely stopped. Something must have happened deeper in the forest. Then another soldier suddenly spots movement in the distance and excitedly announces that the reinforcements have finally arrived, complaining that the higher-ups are always late. From the forest, two figures emerge. Water Shadow and Shifting Shadow arrive alongside a new wave of forces. But something immediately feels wrong. One of the soldiers notices that the newcomers are wearing their clothes inside out and begins questioning them in confusion. Before he can finish speaking, Water Shadow suddenly moves. With a single strike, she shatters the soldier's body into pieces. The surrounding soldiers freeze in horror. Standing amidst the blood, Water Shadow smiles coldly and gives the order. Leave none alive. Slaughter everyone. Meanwhile, the forces that arrived with Water Shadow suddenly turn on their own allies. The soldiers who had been fighting alongside them moments earlier are caught completely off guard as blades begin cutting through their ranks. Panic spreads instantly. One soldier collapses onto the ground, desperately begging to be spared while demanding to know why this is happening. Another soldier hesitates, unable to continue the slaughter. He curses in frustration, saying he can no longer kill his own comrades. Before he can say anything more, Water Shadow appears behind him. With one strike, she splits his body apart. Blood scatters across the ground as she coldly warns the others that anyone who refuses to obey will die by her own hands. Terrified, the remaining soldiers immediately resume the massacre. Fear completely overrides loyalty as they begin slaughtering each other without hesitation. Water Shadow personally kills the last surviving soldier herself. Nearby, the protagonist watches everything silently from behind a large rock. The moment the massacre ends, he immediately moves. Using the confusion as cover, he rushes deeper into the forest at full speed. Behind him, Water Shadow's forces continue advancing through the mountain, sweeping through the area like hunters closing a trap. The protagonist hides briefly behind a tree and listens as one of the soldiers shouts that no one is allowed to escape. The order is absolute. Realizing the same thing is happening across the entire mountain, the protagonist quickly changes direction and continues deeper into the forest. As he runs, he understands the situation clearly. They are killing even their own pirates. The entire mountain has been surrounded. This is not a normal pursuit. It is a driving hunt. For the first time, he realizes he has become the prey. While moving through the forest, he suddenly spots a small group of enemy soldiers resting ahead. Without hesitation, he attacks immediately. The startled soldiers barely manage to react before the protagonist transforms his weapon into the whip sword again. In one precise strike, the blades sweep through the group and kill every soldier instantly. He lands lightly on the ground afterward and checks his status window. His next level up is approaching quickly. At that moment, another group of enemy soldiers appears in the distance while shouting warnings. The protagonist watches them carefully and realizes he may be able to use them somehow. The scene shifts. Elsewhere on the mountain, Tang Wu and the remaining survivors finish eliminating another enemy group. Everyone is breathing heavily from exhaustion after continuous battles. Tang Wu notices something unsettling and asks her grandfather if he felt it too. Tang Wu confirms it immediately. The enemy is deliberately herding them toward the mountain peak. Before they can discuss it further, one of the survivors suddenly comes running toward Tang Wu in panic, urgently telling him that he needs to see something immediately. The survivors, Tang Wu, and the newly arrived group are all led toward the edge of the mountain. As they push through the trees, one of the men suddenly stops in horror and points ahead. A cliff blocks their path completely. Everyone freezes. Despair spreads instantly among the survivors. One man collapses onto the ground in shock, wondering what will happen to them now. Another mutters that everything is over. Someone else panics completely, shouting that he had only come to celebrate the wedding and never expected to die like this. Hearing the hopeless cries, Tang Wu finally explodes in anger. He roars at everyone to shut up. Furious, he demands to know who decided it was over already. Even at his age, he has not given up yet the younger generation is already surrendering their lives. He tells them there's only one thing left to do, Kill every enemy that comes climbing up the mountain. The survivors immediately fall silent under his pressure. One of them weakly responds that they understand. At that moment, another group suddenly approaches through the forest. Tang Wu and Tang Hua immediately prepare for battle. However, before anyone attacks, one of the newcomers hurriedly raises both hands and shouts for them to wait. Hidden quietly among this group is the protagonist. The man quickly explains that they were attacked as well. According to him, the forces brought by the stronghold leader suddenly turned on them too, forcing them to flee for their lives. Tang Wu narrows his eyes. Internal conflict among the enemy? If that is true, then this may be their only opportunity to break through the encirclement and descend the mountain again. Tang Wu immediately orders everyone to move aside if they do not wish to die, because they are heading back down the mountain immediately. Before anyone can move, a loud voice echoes from the forest. The laughter alone is enough to freeze the atmosphere. Everyone turns toward the source of the voice in shock. From behind the trees, Water Shadow slowly emerges alongside Shifting Shadow and a massive army of enemy soldiers. Shifting Shadow walks forward casually while mocking Tang Wu for running so desperately only to corner himself like a rat trapped inside a jar. Tang Wu becomes furious and demands to know who he really is. In response, Shifting Shadow calmly transforms back into the appearance of Du Hyo-ok. Seeing that familiar face again, Tang Wu's rage intensifies instantly. Water Shadow coldly tells Shifting Shadow to stop wasting time and deal with the soul-chasing poison hand already. But Shifting Shadow only smiles. According to him, Tang Wu is going to die anyway, so there is no reason to rush. Besides, one particular person still has not arrived yet, and there is something he wishes to ask first. He then turns toward Tang Wu and calmly asks about the person Tang Wu had been carrying around earlier. That worthless piece of trash. Where is he now? Hidden among the surviving soldiers, the protagonist quietly watches Shifting Shadow. From their perspective, he realizes he has become someone who absolutely must be hunted down and killed. The flash of light that appeared that night and his repeated interference must have completely ruined their original plans. With trembling fingers, he grabs the area above his heart. Despite the danger, a chaotic excitement spreads across his face. Meanwhile, Shifting Shadow slowly scans the surroundings. An expert capable of unleashing a light like that could not possibly have died so easily. He is certain the person is still somewhere nearby. He suddenly shouts loudly into the mountain. If that person is hiding, they should come out immediately. He reminds them that he already said they would meet again. If they do not reveal themselves before he finishes counting to 3, at that exact moment, the protagonist draws his whip sword. With a single precise strike, he instantly cuts down several of Shifting Shadow's soldiers. Shifting Shadow immediately notices him and breaks into a twisted smile. Finally, he found him. But before anyone can react further, the protagonist opens his inventory. A massive beam of blue light erupts from the ground. The sudden flash blinds everyone present. Shifting Shadow instinctively shields his eyes. When the light fades, the protagonist and the corpses he had just created are gone completely. Shifting Shadow stares at the empty space in shock. He disappeared. Recalling the brief moment before the light vanished, Shifting Shadow remembers seeing a shadow moving within it. His eyes slowly shift toward the cliff nearby. He immediately leaps toward the edge and looks down below. Even Tang Wu would not survive such a fall unharmed. Did he commit suicide? Or perhaps, before he can finish his thoughts, Namgung Hai slowly regains consciousness behind him. Still staring down the cliff, Shifting Shadow clicks his tongue in irritation. The situation leaves an unpleasant feeling in his mouth. He then turns toward Namgung Hai with a smile. It is unfortunate, but he supposes he will have to settle for her instead. Still confused and unaware of the situation, Namgung Hai slowly rises and looks at him in disbelief. She nervously calls him Young Master Du and asks what is happening and why he is doing this. Shifting Shadow mockingly asks whether she has always been too foolish to understand the situation around her. At that moment, Tang Wu immediately steps in front of both Tang Hua and Namgung Hai. He orders them to fall back because the enemies are coming. Shifting Shadow casually turns toward his soldiers and orders them to kill Tang Wu, but before he can finish speaking, a loud voice suddenly echoes from behind the enemy forces. Someone loudly tells them to wait. a man pushes through the soldiers while complaining for them to move aside. It is Silver Shadow. Grinning arrogantly, he asks whether they were truly planning to start the feast without someone as great as him. Tang Wu's expression hardens immediately. The enemies they already faced were at the level of peak experts from great clans, yet another monster of similar caliber has appeared. Then Tang Wu notices something horrifying. Silver Shadow is carrying a severed head. With a grin, Silver Shadow throws it toward Tang Wu and announces that he brought a gift. The head rolls across the ground. Namgung Hai stares at it blankly before freezing in horror. Silver Shadow spreads his arms dramatically and proudly reveals his present, the freshly severed head of the Namgung clan patriarch. The moment Silver Shadow reveals the severed head of the Namgung clan patriarch, everyone freezes in horror. Namgung Hai trembles violently before running toward the head lying on the ground. Tang Hua immediately chases after her, trying to stop her. With shaking hands, Namgung Hai slowly lifts the severed head of her grandfather. Words fail to leave her mouth properly as shock overwhelms her. The moment she fully recognizes him, her mind collapses into grief. She clutches the head tightly and breaks down, calling out to her grandfather in despair. Watching the scene unfold, Silver Shadow bursts into uncontrollable laughter. He laughs so hard that he can barely speak properly. To him, the sight of the first beauty of Anhui crying while holding her grandfather's severed head is amusing beyond measure. He openly admits that this exact kind of ruined, sorrowful expression is what excites him the most. Silver Shadow proudly declares that bringing the head truly was the perfect gift. He continues laughing while pointing toward everyone else, asking why nobody else seems amused. Both Water Shadow and Shifting Shadow stare at him with visible irritation. Water Shadow clenches her teeth and curses him as a madman. Even Shifting Shadow looks disgusted, muttering that Silver Shadow is not even human anymore. Silver Shadow awkwardly protests. From his perspective, they already destroyed the Namgung clan, and Tang Wu will soon die as well. That would make 2 beyond peak experts dead, along with 2 beautiful women for him to keep beside him. At that moment, Tang Wu suddenly activates the Dragon Phoenix Golden Needles. Using his hidden arts, he launches both Tang Hua and Namgung Hai into the air with tremendous force, sending them down the cliff. Namgung Hai cries out in shock. Tang Wu reveals that he poured half of his remaining internal energy into the needles. Even so, he knows it is not enough for them to descend the cliff safely. Their limbs may be destroyed. They may even become crippled for life. But none of that matters to him anymore. Their survival is more important than anything else. Shifting Shadow immediately realizes what Tang Wu is doing and shouts at him in anger. Ignoring him completely, Tang Wu roars toward Tang Hua as the 2 girls descend the cliff. He commands Tang Hua of the Sichuan Tang clan to survive no matter what. Even if broken, even if ruined, she must stay alive and one day return to repay this blood debt in his place. As Tang Hua is dragged downward by the power of the needles, she desperately screams for her grandfather. Silver Shadow completely loses his temper. Furious that Tang Wu took away the women he considered his prizes, he immediately draws his sword and launches himself toward Tang Wu. But before he can reach him, Tang Wu releases a massive eruption of internal energy. The overwhelming aura explodes outward and violently blasts Silver Shadow backward through the air. Even Silver Shadow becomes shocked by the sudden pressure radiating from Tang Wu's body. Immense energy surges outward from the soul-chasing poison hand. Standing alone before the heavenly demon castle forces, Tang Wu calmly declares that the only thing he still possesses now is the empty title of one of the 10 greats. And from this moment onward, he, Tang Wu, will personally reap their spirit essence. Along with the corpses stored inside his inventory, the protagonist continues descending the massive cliff. He drives his sword deep into the rocky surface and uses it to slow his fall while sliding downward. As he descends, he calculates the distance mentally. He has already descended roughly 500 meters, but there are still well over 1,000 meters left below him. Descending a cliff like this is practically suicide. However, after repeatedly leveling up, his body has become far stronger than before. If he uses the corpses stored inside his inventory as temporary footholds and buffers to reduce the impact of the descent, surviving may still be possible. Suddenly, his sword strikes a massive rock protruding from the cliffside. The impact violently throws him off balance. His sword slips from his hand and falls away. The protagonist immediately panics. But instead of freezing, he instantly activates his inventory. The inventory bursts open midair. Multiple swords and corpses spill outward into the empty space around him. Using the floating corpses as stepping points, the protagonist rapidly jumps from body to body before finally grabbing his sword again. The moment he regains it, he drives the blade back into the cliff wall. Using another corpse as support, he stabilizes himself once more and continues descending. While sliding downward, he reminds himself that eventually everyone will end up at the bottom of this cliff. Tang Wu, the enemies, everyone. No matter what happens above, he only needs to survive this descent first. After that, he can look for an opportunity. Meanwhile, at the top of the cliff, immense poisonous energy erupts from Tang Wu's body. Watching the overwhelming aura, Shifting Shadow becomes deeply alarmed. He realizes Tang Wu had been unable to use his full poison arts earlier because he was protecting the others. But now, after sending Tang Hua and Namgung Hai away, Tang Wu no longer has anything holding him back. To Shifting Shadow, the fact that Tang Wu risked even his granddaughter's life at the end proves one thing: the old man has been cornered completely. Shifting Shadow immediately orders all soldiers to attack. After hesitating briefly, the enemy forces charge forward together, shouting for Tang Wu's death. Some even scream that they will personally kill the soul-chasing poison hand themselves. At the same time, the remaining survivors are slaughtered as the enemy army advances through the battlefield. Yet Tang Wu does not move. He calmly stands in place before activating one of his poison arts, soul-dementing Ghost Poison Hand. A massive wave of dense toxic aura erupts outward from his body. The poisonous energy crashes directly into the charging soldiers. The moment it touches them, their bodies begin disintegrating instantly. Flesh melts away, leaving behind little more than fragments and bone. The dying soldiers scream in agony as the toxic aura consumes them alive. Seeing the incoming poisonous wave, Shifting Shadow immediately shouts for the others to block it. Shifting Shadow, Water Shadow, and Silver Shadow all raise their weapons and defend themselves with protective energy. Even while resisting the poison, they are forced backward by the destructive force. The surroundings are devastated completely by Tang Wu's attack. Watching the destruction, Shifting Shadow is genuinely shocked. If they had not consumed antidote beads beforehand, even they might have melted alive under that poisonous aura. Meanwhile, Silver Shadow suffers heavily from the poisonous aura released by Tang Wu. Coughing violently, he stumbles backward as the poison rapidly spreads through his body. He can barely breathe and cannot understand how the others remain unaffected while he alone is suffering. Without hesitation, Water Shadow throws a small antidote bead toward him. Silver Shadow quickly swallows it. Almost instantly, the poison inside his body stabilizes and disappears. Relieved, he gasps for air and complains that the others kept such useful items to themselves. At the same time, Tang Wu grabs one of the surviving enemy soldiers by the head. The terrified soldier desperately begs for someone to save him. Tang Wu crushes the man's skull without hesitation and throws the corpse aside. He then turns toward Shifting Shadow, Water Shadow, and Silver Shadow. Seeing the antidote bead, Tang Wu immediately understands. They came fully prepared to kill him from the very beginning. Even so, he reminds them that the person standing before them is one of the 10 greats of Murim. Did they truly believe a mere antidote bead would be enough to stop Tang Wu? The overwhelming confidence in his voice causes all 3 shadows to tense up. Before any of them can react further, Tang Wu suddenly launches himself forward at terrifying speed. In an instant, he appears directly before them. Even Shifting Shadow is caught off guard by the speed. At that moment, Water Shadow reacts first. She swings her weapon with tremendous force and strikes Tang Wu directly, blasting him backward through the air. Believing she successfully broke through his defense, she smiles confidently. However, even while being launched backward, Tang Wu flicks a poisonous dart toward her. Water Shadow is startled by the sudden counterattack. But before the dart can reach her, Shifting Shadow intercepts it with his hand. He mocks Tang Wu, claiming that hidden weapons alone could never work against them. Then suddenly, the dart transforms into a metallic golden lotus. An enormous explosion erupts instantly. The blast violently throws both Water Shadow and Shifting Shadow through the air. Silver Shadow immediately becomes enraged. Holding both swords in his hands, he charges toward Tang Wu, while shouting that the old man should stop hiding behind concealed weapons and fight properly instead. Midair, Silver Shadow activates his martial technique, Shadowed Phantom Bloom. Dozens of blade energy slashes rain down toward Tang Wu from every direction. Tang Wu coldly points out the hypocrisy of calling him cowardly, while 3 shadows attack one old man together. In response, Tang Wu unleashes a barrage of poisonous darts. As they fly through the air, every dart transforms into a blooming golden lotus. The sky erupts into countless explosions simultaneously. Silver Shadow is blasted backward once again by the chain of detonations. Even while being thrown away, he curses the Tang clan for their incredibly underhanded fighting style. But then his expression suddenly changes. One of Tang Wu's poison darts pierced directly into his leg during the exchange. Standing below, Tang Wu stares at him with a cold, chaotic smile. Then he quietly says, "Caught you." Tang Wu immediately takes advantage of the poison dart lodged in Silver Shadow's leg. Using internal energy, he creates a thin energy thread connected directly to the dart. With a violent pull, Silver Shadow is dragged out of the air toward him. Blood sprays from the wound as his body is forcefully reeled in. Panicking, Silver Shadow quickly raises both swords in front of himself. He prepares to defend, but Tang Wu moves first. Another barrage of poisonous darts shoots forward. The darts pierce Silver Shadow's body one after another. His body suddenly locks in place midair. Silver Shadow immediately realizes what happened. Pressure point strikes. His body stops responding. Before he can react further, Tang Wu grabs him by the hair. Coldly staring at him, Tang Wu says he will begin by taking the eyes that dared look at Tang Hua. Then Tang Wu reaches forward. Without hesitation, he tears one of Silver Shadow's eyes out with his fingers. Silver Shadow releases a scream filled with pain. At that exact moment, a burst of lightning appears behind Tang Wu. He turns immediately. Shifting Shadow is already there. Before Tang Wu can fully evade, Shifting Shadow unleashes a palm strike. Tang Wu avoids a direct hit, but the attack still tears through part of his ear. Tang Wu instantly realizes something. The saber techniques were only a disguise. Shifting Shadow's true specialty was palm arts all along. Lightning gathers around Shifting Shadow's body as he closes in. Furious, he attacks. Activating Thunderclap 100 Strikes Palm. A barrage of condensed palm strikes floods toward Tang Wu. Tang Wu counters immediately. Activating Delusional 6 Acupoint Blood Hand. Dense green poisonous energy surges forward. The two attacks collide. An enormous explosion tears through the battlefield. But this time, Tang Wu is pushed backward. His expression changes. His internal energy is running low. Shifting Shadow notices immediately. With a twisted smile, he tells Tang Wu that his internal energy is finally reaching its limit. Nearby, Silver Shadow remains kneeling on the ground. Poisoned, bleeding, half-blind. Using one sword to support himself, he stares toward the battle. He mutters that he cannot see properly anymore. His precious eyes, the eyes he used to admire beautiful women, were ruined. At that moment, Shifting Shadow raises his weapon from afar and shouts at Tang Wu. Then Silver Shadow suddenly moves. Using his remaining strength, he throws his sword. He roars that if he is going down, Tang Wu is coming with him. The sword cuts through the battlefield. Even Shifting Shadow is surprised. Tang Wu tries to avoid it, but the sword still lands. Blood bursts from Tang Wu's mouth. Shifting Shadow immediately seizes the opening. He closes the distance and drives a heavy palm strike directly into Tang Wu's abdomen. The impact launches Tang Wu backward. Tang Wu tries to regain control, but his body is dragged across the ground, straight toward Water Shadow. She had already been waiting, weapon raised. The instant Tang Wu reaches her, she strikes. The blow crashes directly into Tang Wu's abdomen. The impact sends him flying again. He crashes violently into the trees behind him. Dust erupts and covers the battlefield. Shifting Shadow and Water Shadow both stare into the clouds silently. Meanwhile, Silver Shadow remains on the ground. Holding his ruined eye and shaking with rage, he curses Tang Wu. Then he slowly pulls out his remaining sword. With fury filling his face, he says he will cut Tang Wu's throat personally. Shifting Shadow stopped Silver Shadow and told him to wait. At that moment, Tang Wu stabilized himself. Water Shadow's earlier strike had severely damaged one of his arms, leaving it nearly torn apart. Yet he still stepped forward toward the three of them. Seeing him continue moving despite his condition, Shifting Shadow was caught off guard and inwardly called him a crazy old man before growing irritated. Without hesitation, Shifting Shadow, Silver Shadow, and Water Shadow attacked together. Tang Wu moved as well. As they closed the distance, Tang Wu released another barrage of poisonous darts. Instead of flying directly at the enemies, the darts buried themselves into the ground and exploded upward. Only then did Shifting Shadow realize Tang Wu had already planted hidden weapons beneath them. The explosion forced Shifting Shadow and Silver Shadow backward. Water Shadow, however, broke through and rushed in with her weapon. Tang Wu avoided the first strike and continued moving through the following attacks. Water Shadow increased the intensity and released a continuous series of blows. Tang Wu shifted from dodging to directly blocking with his remaining healthy arm. One collision pushed Water Shadow back. Looking at her weapon, she realized Tang Wu had been striking the same spot repeatedly. Ignoring that realization, she raised her weapon and attacked again. At the same time, Silver Shadow charged in from another direction. The two coordinated their attacks and swung together. Tang Wu jumped at the exact moment their attacks crossed. Their own weapons collided instead. While passing through, Tang Wu had already released another hidden weapon. The poisonous dart transformed into a golden lotus. Silver Shadow noticed it only after seeing the change. The explosion erupted immediately. All three, Silver Shadow, Water Shadow, and even Shifting Shadow, were thrown backward. Fragments and hidden darts scattered through the blast. Several darts struck Shifting Shadow. Realizing the poison would not hold him for long, Shifting Shadow became determined to kill Tang Wu immediately. Tang Wu did not give him time. He rushed directly toward him. But before reaching him, Tang Wu suddenly stopped. Water Shadow had grabbed hold of his nearly destroyed arm. She blocked his path and refused to let him advance further. Then she bit directly into the damaged arm. Tang Wu's movement faltered from the pain. Nearby, Shifting Shadow began recovering. Tang Wu looked toward him and understood that the poison would wear off soon. This was his final opportunity. Tang Wu made his decision. Rather than retreat, he abandoned the arm completely. Clenching his teeth, he forced himself forward and tore his injured arm free. Ignoring the injury, he closed the distance and struck Shifting Shadow directly in the abdomen with his remaining arm. The impact launched Shifting Shadow backward and sent him over the cliff. Tang Wu remained standing. Despite his injuries, he turned toward Water Shadow and Silver Shadow. Now only two remained. Tang Wu slowly walked toward Shifting Shadow and Silver Shadow. As he moved forward, he thought quietly to himself. His internal energy was gone. His hidden weapons had all been exhausted. What remained was only this old and damaged body. He stopped in front of Water Shadow. The two faced each other. Without exchanging words, both gathered energy into their fists. They stepped forward and struck at the same time. Their punches collided directly. The impact pushed both of them backward. Blood spilled from their mouths. At that moment, Silver Shadow recovered and moved again. Activating his technique, he rushed toward Tang Wu with his sword raised, shouting for him to finally die. Tang Wu simply dropped his body low and rolled across the ground to avoid the strike. Silver Shadow froze for a moment and angrily mocked him for using something as crude as a donkey roll while carrying the title of one of the 10 greats, and asked where his honor had gone. Tang Wu immediately rushed back at him. He repeated the word honor, then released a brutal strike that launched Silver Shadow into the air. Tang Wu said that he had thrown honor off a cliff long ago. Silver Shadow flew backward, coughing blood. His body headed directly toward Water Shadow. She reacted at the last moment. Instead of catching him, she grabbed his leg and swung his body. Using Silver Shadow like a weapon, she slammed him into Tang Wu. Tang Wu was thrown backward, but regained his footing. Water Shadow discarded Silver Shadow's body and stepped forward again. Tang Wu looked at her and said that someone like her could never defeat him. People who lacked both the resolve to face death and the courage to sacrifice anything. The two moved toward each other again. Their clash continued. Time passed. Morning arrived. Compared to the battle from before, the mountain had become strangely quiet. Sunlight spread across the cliff. At the top, Tang Wu stood there. Water, shadow hung from his grip, held by her hair. Blood dripped from her mouth. She had already lost consciousness. Tang Wu remained standing in front of Silver Shadow while still holding her. Silver Shadow slowly regained consciousness. After seeing the scene before him, he became pale. Even with 3 shadows and more than 100 warriors, they had failed to kill a single wounded old man. Tang Wu started walking toward him. Silver Shadow completely lost his composure. He backed away and desperately told Tang Wu to stay away and called him monster. At that moment, someone was climbing upward from below the cliff. It appeared to be Hua. Tang Wu continued walking, unaware. Silver Shadow became even more frightened. As Tang Wu reached him, Silver Shadow shouted again for him to stay away. In panic, he grabbed a handful of sand and threw it into Tang Wu's face. He screamed for him to get lost. The dust scattered. Tang Wu did not react. He only stared quietly at Silver Shadow. Seeing that expression, Silver Shadow felt cold. He could not understand it. This old man had somehow crossed the point of fear. Tang Wu released Water Shadow's hair. Her body dropped onto the ground. Then he slowly extended his hand towards Silver Shadow. Silver Shadow completely broke down. Fear filled his face, tears gathered in his eyes, and he shouted for Tang Wu to stay away. At that moment, someone rushed toward Tang Wu. Tang Wu instinctively moved to respond. But the moment he saw who it was, he stopped. His expression changed. Looking at the approaching figure, he spoke in confusion. Wha? How? Before he could react, the hand pierced straight through his abdomen. Blood spilled, but it was not Hua. The figure's face distorted partially and revealed its true appearance. It was Shifting Shadow. With a twisted smile, Shifting Shadow told Tang Wu that he had finally caught him. Then he pulled his arm back and threw Tang Wu away. Tang Wu crashed across the ground before stopping. Silver Shadow stared at the transformed figure and realized who it was. Meanwhile, Shifting Shadow remained absorbed in his own thoughts. If Tang Wu's punch had contained even a little more internal energy, he would never have made it back up the cliff alive. Looking at Tang Wu sitting wounded on the ground, Shifting Shadow declared that the battle was over. Silver Shadow slowly stood back up. Holding his sword, he agreed. He admitted that he had truly believed he was going to die. Then he walked toward Tang Wu. With a distorted smile, he said Tang Wu would not be allowed an easy death. He talked about taking his eyes, cutting off his limbs, and finishing him last. He even spoke about going down the cliff afterward, but stopped. Tang Wu moved. His arm trembled violently. Still, he slowly raised his hand. His fingers formed a hand sign. Silver Shadow frowned and cursed him for still trying to resist. Tang Wu thought quietly. Compared to the original, this technique was incomplete. But if this was truly where his life ended, then even an imperfect form would have to be enough. Even if it consumed the last fragments of his life. Tang Wu activated heaven-shrouding petal rain. The sky changed. Thousands of poisonous hidden weapons appeared overhead. Then they descended. Darts buried themselves into the earth everywhere. Shifting Shadow and Silver Shadow immediately moved toward Water Shadow to protect her. As Silver Shadow moved, he realized the hidden weapons were exploding. A chain of detonations spread across the entire cliff. Thousands of explosions erupted. Everything nearby shattered. The shockwave threw Tang Wu from a cliff. As he fell, one final thought crossed his mind. Wha? He had wanted to see her get married before dying. Now, he only hoped she would survive. Tang Wu's body descended. Far below, he struck the ground. The impact sent nearby butterflies into the air. At the bottom of the cliff, someone was already waiting. Our protagonist sat on top of the pile of fallen corpses. He awkwardly bit one of his fingers. Then he turned toward Tang Wu's fallen body and quietly said, "Finally, you're finally here, Tang Wu." Even after falling from the cliff and crashing into the ground, Tang Wu remained alive. After some time, he slowly opened his eyes. He realized he had survived, but his body no longer responded. Lying motionless inside the crater formed by the fall, he checked his condition and understood that his innate chi had completely dispersed. Death would not be far away. Using the last remaining strength in his body, Tang Wu looked around. The area was covered with butterflies. As they gradually flew away, the ground beneath them became visible. Bodies were scattered everywhere. Tang Wu looked more carefully. They were the fallen wedding guests and pirates. But something was wrong. These people had not simply died from a fall. Someone had finished them afterward. Then, Tang Wu noticed someone sitting nearby behind him. He slowly turned. After recognizing the figure, He spoke in disbelief. It was Tang Sam. Tang Wu looked again. The slaughtered martial artists beneath the cliff. The sword stained with blood. Tang Sam sitting there as though he had been waiting. After a pause, Tang Wu asked who he really was. Holding a small dagger, our protagonist approached and called him by name. Then, with a calm but distorted expression, he said Tang Wu had no idea how long he had waited for this moment. Tang Wu became angry. He reminded him that he had personally given him the Tang family name, and now he intended to kill him. Tang Wu cursed him and accused him of turning against his own master. He said he should have killed him back on the ship. Then he ordered the goo inside Tang Sam's body to tear apart its host. Tang Wu even laughed and said the parasite would soon destroy him from within. But our protagonist quietly raised the dagger. He pointed it directly toward Tang Wu's eye. Then he told him that thing had already been removed long ago. Tang Wu froze. He could not understand how that was possible. Our protagonist tightened his grip on the dagger and held it above Tang Wu. Then he thought quietly. This world was a world of madmen. People learned techniques created for killing and called them martial arts. People lived by laws where the weak became prey. Sometimes they acted in the name of orthodoxy, sometimes in the name of unorthodoxy, sometimes in the name of the demonic path. But in the end, all of them enforced their justice through violence. In this place where strength became order, there were butterflies flying through the sky, and he had been nothing more than a caterpillar crawling below. But now, in this world, he would kill Tang Wu. He would become a butterfly, and once again, become a hunter that hunted the beasts known as martial artists. Holding the dagger with both hands, our protagonist looked at Tang Wu and said with a twisted smile, Tang Wu was his greatest prey. Tang Wu refused to accept it. He struggled and shouted that the soul-chasing poison hand could not die to someone he had once raised. He denied it to the very end. But before he could continue, our protagonist drove the dagger directly into his eye. Tang Wu's body went still. The moment Tang Wu died, blue light began gathering around our protagonist. The light spread from every direction. Then it intensified. A massive pillar of blue light shot into the sky and covered the entire area. After some time, the light gradually faded. Looking upward, our protagonist realized his level had risen dramatically. He gained 10 levels and reached level 24. After seeing the result, he thought quietly. 10 levels was significant, but it felt lower than expected for someone with Tang Wu's reputation. He had expected more. Looking at Tang Wu's body, he reached a conclusion. Tang Wu had already been near death. Most likely, the experience had already been dispersed, and if the enemies above had pushed Tang Wu to this state, then going back now would accomplish nothing. Either he still could not defeat them, or they had already escaped. Then another update appeared before him. His first class advancement quest, the Tester Exclusive Vagabond Advancement, had reached 99 out of 100. Only one enemy of level 10 or higher remained. Our protagonist paused. Then, he pulled the dagger free. Tang Wu's damaged, I came with it. He cleaned the blade with one motion. Then he thought, Tang Wu could not have fallen alone. He had not found her yet, but she had to be somewhere nearby. A smile appeared on his face. Only one more remained, until he advanced in a vagabond. The scene shifted to another location near the bottom of the cliff. The two women had fallen there. Lady Hai had crashed against a large stone. Lady Hua had fallen into the earth nearby. After some time, Hua slowly regained consciousness. Looking at the unfamiliar surroundings, she tried to understand where she was. When she attempted to move, pain spread through her body. Her leg refused to support her. She realized it was badly broken. She did not know how much time had passed, but she was alive. Then she saw Hai. Hua immediately became worried. Ignoring her injuries, she tried to move toward her. She called out and reached for her. But after getting close, she realized Hai was already dead. Her expression collapsed. Tears appeared, but after a moment, she forced herself to continue. Her grandfather had told her to survive, so she had to live. Slowly, she crawled forward. Again and again, she repeated the same thought. She had to survive. She had to return to the Tang clan. She had to keep moving. But after crawling a short distance, she suddenly stopped. Someone was standing in front of her. She looked up and recognized him. Her eyes widened. She asked how he had ended up here. Our protagonist looked down at her silently. His expression remained cold and dark. Hua looked at our protagonist in confusion and asked how he had ended up there. Then she quickly tried to gather herself and asked for help. She said she needed to return to the Tang family, but her legs no longer responded. At that moment, her eyes stopped on the dagger in his hand. Blood was dripping from it. Seeing the blade, she suddenly remembered something from childhood. Tang Wu had once told her that members of the Tang family built their internal energy through poison, and because of that, poison naturally accumulated inside their bodies over time. The deeper their training became, the more poison spread through their bones, muscles, and blood. It was not enough to become a danger to themselves, but enough to affect the outside world. To show her, Tang Wu had once melted a piece of iron with poison. After that, he lightly tapped her head and told her never to neglect training because one day she would reach his level, or perhaps even surpass him. Returning to the present, Hua looked again at the dagger. The corrosion marks left on the blade matched Tang Wu's poison. Her expression slowly changed. She asked whether he had killed her grandfather. Unable to understand it, she asked how someone who had been given the Tang surname could do something like this. Then anger replaced confusion. Calling him a traitor, she forced her broken body forward. Using what little strength remained, she crawled and grabbed him, saying she would kill him. Our protagonist looked down at her. His expression stayed cold. Looking at Hua struggling across the ground, he quietly thought that it looked no different from insects. To him, Anhui itself had become a giant goo jar created by the heavenly demon castle, a place where insects survive by killing one another. And wasn't it said that the longer an insect survived inside the jar, the more poisonous it became? If every insect died and only one remained, how powerful would that accumulated poison become? Looking at Tang Hua, he wondered the same. After thinking for a moment, he sat down near her. Then he calmly said that killing her now held little value. It might not even fulfill what he needed, because she was weak. Still crying, Hua repeated his words in disbelief and asked what he was talking about. Our protagonist then drove the dagger into the ground directly in front of her. He admitted that Tang Wu had died by his hands. And because of that, if she wanted repayment for Tang Wu's life, she should come and take it herself. He said he would wait. Those words broke her completely. As he turned and walked away, Hua cried, cursed him, and swore she would kill him one day. She shouted that he would regret leaving her alive. But our protagonist continued walking. While leaving, he thought that Anhui was no longer the only goo jar. Now the entire Murim had become one. The orthodox path, the unorthodox path, the heavenly demon castle. Soon, countless insects would gather and kill each other. And if he wanted to survive, if he wanted to continue hunting, he needed to become stronger than he was now. At minimum, strong enough to stand against someone of Tang Wu's level. Looking at his status, our protagonist judged that reaching the vagabond class would probably require more than completing the condition alone. He estimated that he would also need to reach level 30. He looked up at the sky and quietly thought about what came next. To get there, he would need to hunt more efficiently than before. Then his expression slowly changed. A faint smile appeared on his face. He decided to change his hunting ground. As he continued walking, he thought that he needed a place with more blood, more battles, and more opportunities to gain experience. Meanwhile, the scene shifted back to the top of the cliff. The explosion created by Tang Wu had ended. All three shadows survived, but suffered heavy injuries. Silver Shadow struggled to stand and complained that Tang Wu had detonated hidden weapons directly in front of them. He admitted he had believed the Tang clan's heaven-shrouding petal rain had already been lost. Shifting Shadow explained that what Tang Wu used was incomplete. According to him, Tang Wu lacked the internal energy to reproduce the original technique and only managed to recreate its outer form by detonating the hidden weapons he had prepared beforehand. Even while saying that, Shifting Shadow quietly admitted to himself that the result was still far stronger than expected. He looked toward Water Shadow. Her body had been heavily damaged from shielding them. Shifting Shadow concluded that they had survived only because Water Shadow had taken the impact. Otherwise, they would not have made it out alive. Silver Shadow agreed. He commented that Water Shadow had always been unusually durable and that her heart guard had kept her alive, even if she was now barely holding on. After that, Shifting Shadow turned and announced the next step. Silver Shadow would take Water Shadow and return to Mubon. Meanwhile, he himself would head to the Murim Alliance and prepare the second stratagem. Silver Shadow immediately reacted. He became alarmed and protested. Going to Mubon alone was something he clearly wanted to avoid. He refused and insisted they should return together. But before he could continue, Shifting Shadow launched himself into the air and disappeared. Silver Shadow shouted after him, but there was no response. Left alone, he clicked his tongue. Then, while grinding his teeth, he quietly admitted to himself that he was scared. The scene shifted again. Deep within the mountains stood the heavenly, demonic castle of Muban. The fortress was surrounded by steep cliffs and illuminated with dark red light. Outside its enormous gates, Silver Shadow stood nervously. Water Shadow was being carried behind him on a stretcher by servants. Looking at her, he repeatedly reassured himself that nothing bad would happen. After taking a breath, he pushed open the gate. Inside the palace court, Muban sat on his throne. Silver Shadow immediately entered. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees and bowed. He reported that the first stratagem had been completed successfully. He tried to downplay Water Shadow's injuries and insisted there had been no real issues. Then he explained that the Namgung clan had been destroyed. He added that he personally brought back the patriarch's head. He also began mentioning Tang Wu, but then he suddenly froze. Without noticing, Muban had already appeared behind him. With a cold expression, Muban asked him to repeat himself. Then he quietly questioned whether the first stratagem had truly ended without any problems.
Watching Muban's expression, Silver Shadow was overcome with fear. He immediately lowered himself into another deep bow and nervously insisted that everything had indeed gone according to plan. At that moment, a brilliant blue light erupted throughout the hall. Although startled by the sudden light, Silver Shadow remained kneeling without daring to lift his head. Muban slowly approached him and questioned his report. If the first stratagem had truly proceeded without any issues, then why had Shifting Shadow gone to the Murim Alliance instead of returning? He continued with the same cold expression, asking why Water Shadow had come back in such a heavily wounded state. Silver Shadow was left speechless. Before he could explain, Muban cut him off. He warned that if such a failure happened again, death would be the least of Silver Shadow's concerns and demanded that he remember those words. Trembling with fear, Silver Shadow could only bow his head and acknowledge the order. Muban then walked toward Water Shadow's barely living body, which lay on the ground. Sitting beside her, he placed a hand on her head and spoke of countless streams eventually returning to their source. A brilliant current of energy gathered in his hand. As he drew the energy from Water Shadow's body, he explained that in the end there was no distinction between one person and another. Flesh might perish, but the Chi Ocean would return to him. That principle was known as the return of all streams to the source. After completely absorbing her energy, Muban's appearance changed. His aged body transformed into a vigorous, youthful form. Looking at Water Shadow's lifeless body, he remarked that she would become whole again through him. Witnessing the entire process, Silver Shadow was horrified. Even so, he immediately lowered his head again and congratulated Muban on his transformation, never daring to show the fear on his face. Muban then sat beside him. After a brief silence, he said there was one thing he wanted to know. Placing a finger beneath Silver Shadow's chin, he forced him to raise his head and calmly asked why the first stratagem had failed. As Muban began drawing energy from his body, Silver Shadow panicked. Stammering through his fear, he explained that someone outside the original plan had interfered. According to Shifting Shadow, that person had appeared alongside the soul-chasing poison hand. He hurriedly added that the mysterious individual had fallen from the cliffs of Seonjung Mountain. Finally, he revealed the detail that had caught Shifting Shadow's attention. The stranger was an expert whose martial arts emitted light. Muban paused in confusion after hearing the mention of light. Shifting Shadow, still trembling in fear, hurriedly explained that it had been a massive pillar of light. The moment those words left his mouth, Muban's expression changed. His eyes widened and he withdrew his hand from Shifting Shadow's chin. Freed from the pressure, Shifting Shadow collapsed to the ground, coughing violently. Muban immediately summoned Bian and Gwanga. In an instant, the two servants descended before him, knelt, and awaited their order. Muban instructed Bian to take Ash Shadow to the bottom of Seonjung Mountain. If the mysterious man was dead, they were to bring back his corpse. If nothing remained but fragments, they were to recover even his bones. Bian accepted the order without hesitation, and the two departed at once. Muban then turned to Gwangun and ordered him to deliver a message to Old Beak. Gwangun cautiously warned that doing so would be dangerous and asked him to reconsider. Muban answered only with a cold glance. Understanding there would be no changing his decision, Gwangun bowed, accepted the order, and also disappeared. Left alone in the hall, Muban's thoughts lingered on a single detail. As he rubbed his neck, back he quietly wondered whether that pillar of light had truly been the sign of a level up after all. Meanwhile, in another village, an old man was resting on a bench when a crow landed on his wrist carrying a letter. After reading the message, he headed to a nearby tavern. Inside, a woman named Miss Yon sat casually eating noodles while drinking alcohol. The old man approached and informed her that a letter had arrived from their master, asking them to search for someone. Without looking up, Miss Yon told him to wait until she finished eating. After emptying both her bowl and drink, she slammed the cup onto the table, stood up, and asked the owner how much she owed. The owner replied that the meal cost 3 coins. As Miss Yon reached beneath her clothing for money, the shopkeeper eyed her shamelessly and suggested she return another time so they could drink together. Ignoring him completely, she produced a single coin and held it between her fingers. The owner frowned and reminded her that the price was 3 coins. Instead of paying, she flicked the coin into the air. When it landed, she stopped it beneath her foot. Confused and irritated, the shopkeeper demanded to know what she was doing. With a playful smile, Miss Yon simply asked whether he chose heads or tail. The shopkeeper angrily refused, insisting that she pay the full amount instead. Miss Yon silently fixed him with an emotionless stare. As her gaze remained locked on him, the pressure became overwhelming. Unable to withstand it any longer, the terrified shopkeeper finally gave in and weakly answered, heads. The black-haired woman smiled mischievously and lifted her foot from the coin. Seeing that it had landed on heads, the shopkeeper let out a relieved cry. She simply remarked that it was boring before leaving the tavern with the old man. Still shaken, the shopkeeper wished her a safe journey. After they were gone, he sighed in relief, realizing she had likely been a martial artist and that he had nearly lost his life over 3 coins. In the next instant, the woman silently appeared behind him. Without hesitation, she thrust a finger forward, releasing a concentrated burst of energy that pierced straight through his head. His body collapsed onto the counter as she casually muttered in amusement. The old man hurried over, reminding her that the coin had clearly landed on heads. She leaned down, flipped the coin over with a finger, and licked the blood from her fingertip before calmly pointing out that it was tails now. The old man could only sigh. Ignoring the mess, she repeatedly smashed the shopkeeper's head, splattering blood across the tavern. The old man warned that causing such a scene in broad daylight would make cleaning up difficult. She dismissed the concern, then severed the shopkeeper's head completely and held it up with an entertained smile, remarking that they could simply kill everyone if necessary. The old man quietly drew his sword and said he would handle the rest before walking away. As he left, the woman suddenly remembered their earlier conversation and casually asked who it was they had been sent to find. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the Murim Alliance. Inside the Alliance's meeting hall, the leaders of the major sects and clans gathered as the Alliance leader, the Taoist Sage of Heaven, officially began the Murim Great Council. Peng Mahyok, the patriarch of the Hubei Peng clan, immediately demanded to know whether the rumors about the heavenly demon castle destroying the Namgung clan were true. Tang Hweryong, the matriarch of the Sichuan Tang family, rebuked him, reminding everyone that Tang Wu had already fallen and that this could no longer be dismissed as mere rumor. Shocked, Peng Mahyok angrily questioned her statement. The Alliance leader calmed everyone and confirmed that the Alliance's investigation had verified the attack. The Namgung clan had indeed been assaulted by the heavenly demon castle. The leader of the Wudang sect reacted with anger, while the Shaolin abbot quietly recited a Buddhist prayer. The Alliance leader explained that although the heavenly demon castle had remained hidden for centuries, it had suddenly resurfaced with terrifying strength. The Wudang leader remarked that such power was enough to wipe out the Namgung clan. However, the Alliance leader corrected him, explaining that it was not a complete extermination because one survivor had reached the Murim Alliance. At that moment, Namgung Hai entered the hall, respectfully greeted the gathered leaders and introduced herself as the second daughter of the Namgung clan. Tang Hweryong looked at her in surprise, realizing there had been a survivor, and asked her to personally recount what had happened. She wanted to know whether the heavenly demon castle had truly been responsible for the destruction of the Namgung clan and the death of Tang Wu. Namgung Hai respectfully confirmed that the Namgung clan had indeed fallen to the heavenly demon castle. She explained that without Tang Wu's protection, she would not have survived either. Zhuge Mun, the patriarch of the Zhuge clan, acknowledged the tragedy but urged everyone to remain cautious, insisting they first determine the enemy's true strength. Before he could continue, a poisoned hidden weapon shot toward him. He narrowly avoided it as it embedded itself in the wall behind him. Everyone turned toward Tang Hweryong, who had thrown it in anger. Peng Mahyok slammed the table and demanded to know why she had been acting so recklessly, accusing her of failing to understand the situation. Tang Hwaryong fiercely argued that everyone else was the one refusing to face reality. The heavenly demon castle had invaded the Namgung clan, destroyed it, and openly declared war. In her eyes, there was nothing left to discuss except retaliation. Jujmun countered that such a response was exactly what the enemy wanted, and warned that countless lives would be sacrificed if they rushed into battle. Tang Hwaryong turned to the alliance leader and demanded to know whether the Murim alliance truly intended to remain idle. Silence filled the hall. After a long pause, the alliance leader finally agreed that this was war. Too much blood from the Orthodox faction had already been spilled, and according to the law of Murim, blood could only be repaid with blood. Tang Hwaryong immediately supported the decision, declaring that Murim answered swords with swords and blood with blood. The alliance leader then formally announced that, from that moment onward, the Murim alliance was officially at war with Heavenly Demon Castle. Outside the meeting hall, Namgung Hai quietly listened to the entire discussion. A faint, unreadable smile appeared on her face. Later that night, beside a quiet pond near the Murim alliance, the alliance leader walked with Jujmun. He explained that Tang Hwaryong had been blinded by grief over Tang Wu's death and added that one of the children who had escaped with him had returned to the Tang family in terrible condition. Because of that, he hoped Jujmun would overlook her earlier behavior. Jujmun replied that he held no resentment. In fact, the Tang family's anger would only ensure they fought more fiercely than anyone else in the coming war. The alliance leader laughed in agreement, explaining that messages had already been sent to the other sects and that the Orthodox factions would soon unite. After centuries of peace, the Central Plains would once again be consumed by war. Drawing his sword, he remarked that they were warriors by nature and that they had spent too long hiding behind the appearance of the Orthodox path. Looking toward the night sky, Jujmun noticed a crimson star shining above them. He warned that the cursed killing star had risen, a sign long associated with bloodshed. Its appearance coinciding with the heavenly demon castle's return was no coincidence, and he urged the alliance leader to remain cautious. The alliance leader acknowledged the legend, recalling that the extreme yin killing star was said to herald beings with monstrous, supernatural power. Even so, he dismissed its significance, reasoning that Murim itself had always been built upon blood and corpses, making the appearance of a single star seem insignificant. Although unconvinced, he assured Jujmun that he would remember the warning before taking his leave. Left alone beneath the crimson sky, Jujmun quietly gazed at the ominous star and reflected that a Murim built upon blood and corpses was, in truth, simply Murim itself.